Powered by Riverside FM.
According to the great man theory, people in positions of power deserve to lead because of the characteristics granted to them at birth, which ultimately help them become heroes. It's a belief popularized by authors like Ayn Rand in her 1957 novel Atlas Shrugged, a story that sees a future dystopia where America's great magnates have fled to a capitalist utopia untouched by government regulations. Rand and her works would be one of the inspirations behind 2007's Bioshock, an FPS fable regarding a libertarian lost paradise under the Atlantic Ocean. Although the title was lauded for its subversive meta-commentary on games, one oft-overlooked aspect is how a great man framework also informed much of Bioshock's promotional identity. As Bioshock the story had Andrew Ryan, the supposed visionary leader of Rapture, Bioshock the game was directed by 2K Boston's Ken Levine, an East Coast wonderkind who cut his teeth at the groundbreaking Looking Glass Studios. Bioshock was an of-its-time prestige video game, and like prestige television, that classification came from having an important name attached to it, which created an interesting problem when it came to a direct sequel to Bioshock, without Levine's authorial voice behind it. Would it be possible to create a great work without a supposed great man behind it? Well, on this episode of Bullet Time, we start a new mini-series on the games of 2K Marin, starting with their 2010 shooter, Bioshock 2. I mean, I did have a weird question to start off the pod as like a thing of essentially getting conversation going. Granted, I don't know how good of a question it is.
Go for it.
Okay, if you were... Okay, of two like terrifying situations, which would you rather be stuck in? Which is... Would you be rather being trapped in space or trapped under the ocean?
Oh, what an easy question. I would take space any day of the fucking week.
Really? You would take space?
Oh, I hate the ocean.
Interesting.
My two greatest phobias are spiders and the ocean.
Okay. What do you think it is? Like, well, I'm assuming, like, did you ever, like, learn to swim as a kid or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go out on a limb and say Jaws didn't help. But, like, there's something about the fact that, like, if you go into the ocean, like, if someone just, like, sim picked you up and then just, like, dropped you somewhere in the ocean, like, and you looked down, there's a non-zero chance that there is something trying to kill you directly underneath you. But, like, if you get sim dropped in space, there's just nothing there. And to me, that's a lot less scary.
That's interesting, because I was going to give the same answer of I find the ocean scarier than space as well, but from a completely different... So you're kind of... The threat that you have, and I guess that goes along with spiders, is that, like, you don't like the idea of being, like, terrorized by something in the ocean, I guess.
Yes.
Cool. Versus me, where it was, like... I thought that the idea of, say, like, being in Rapture, which is, like, so many fathoms deep, the idea of being, like, the pressure, like, the intense pressure being under the ocean and then, like almost getting crushed to death by that, I found that scarier than just space where there's... I mean, I guess there is pressure in atmosphere, but, like... I don't know, I guess it's a different thing, but...
It's a totally different thing, but it's... Yeah, no, I mean, you know, it's so funny that you say that because, like... I think I would be okay in Rapture, like not Rapture, but you know what I mean. But like a city under the water, like Rapture. I think I would be relatively okay because I would be like, I'm safe here.
Well, I was gonna say, would you feel comfier in a submarine versus like the International Space Station?
No. No, it's a hard no.
Is that just based on all the nice clips that they put out of like all the NASA astronauts up there? There's no nice footage of anybody on a submarine when you think about it.
Even if it was okay, maybe this counteracts what I just said about Rapture, but like just like the thought of looking out of a window in a submarine or the little like nautical visual thing or whatever it's called, and just seeing something enormous is terrifying to me. Oh man. I was actually watching a clip yesterday. In Fallout 4, there is an unused big fish or something that was going to be like utilized somewhere that they just never put anywhere, but they like left it under the water.
Yeah.
And I clicked on it because I heard about it and I wanted to see it. And like the video starts with like somebody like on a bunch of boats and they just jump underwater and start swimming towards this thing. And I turned the video off. I was like, I don't want to see this. I don't want to like just see this big fish appear from the darkness. No, thank you.
What do you think of, and I guess we could, I mean, I guess this isn't like a massive spoiler and this will be quite a couple of weeks out as well from when it came out. In the Fallout TV show, what did you think of like the creepy axolotl thing that is in one of the episodes?
I thought it was kind of cute. I don't know what it was about it, but I thought it was kind of cute in a gross way. I mean, like its finger mouth was not cute.
Yeah,
but like its eyes were like cute, and I was like, aw.
No, to be honest, like I had the same thing of like I thought, oh, okay. Like when it turned up, there's ones that turned up and I was like, oh, they're kind of pulling the punches a little bit, I guess. Oh, it's television, whatever. And then it's opened its mouth, and yeah, the mouth is like full of fingers, and I was like, oh, that's really weird and interesting. Okay,
yeah,
like, I'm locked in. Let's see like what happens from here. But
dude, the Fallout show was so good.
It was. Not that this is about the Fallout show, but we'll do a tiny side tangent on it. I'm not like the biggest fan of the Fallout games, but I did genuinely like. It's the thing of I really like the lore and the world of the Fallout. Like I find it just a really interesting setting, and it has neat ideas. But then like it's just whatever the Bethesda first-person RPG formula. It just like I've never gelled with it. Like I'm not saying it's bad. It's just like for some odd reason I've just never really glomped onto it in a way that like most people do. And I find that like such a hurdle to get over to actually engage with the world stuff. So like the fact that they just made a TV show which was like, oh, you can just enjoy Fallout passively now. I was like, okay, great. Like lock me in.
Yeah, no, I mean even though I like the Bethesda games, I the lore for Fallout is super neat. I'm not super up to date on like the very early games, but like the Fallout 1, 2, and New Vegas specifically all just kind of like handle like factions and like personal beliefs and like these like this really like morally gray like sweet spot so well, and then they put just exceedingly great player agency in that. It's like so good. No, New Vegas is great, and like and people shit on Fallout 4 for like being like the worst written Fallout game of all time, but like I've been playing the Far Harbor DLC, and dear God, it is so good.
It's always a bit of a Nintendo Mario thing where people say, well, it's the worst written Fallout, but it's like even Fallout written at its worst is still like a higher caliber than most stuff, you know?
Yeah, I mean, Fallout 4 maybe not so much, but but people dog on Fallout 3, but I think it at least had a good angle on a lot of it, what it was trying to do, even if it was very binary as opposed to like the kind of gray area that Fallout 1, 2, and New Vegas hit.
Yeah. Fallout 3 I always find it, and I guess kind of related to what we're talking about today, which is that like I always kind of think that Bioshock 1 prepped people quite a bit for Fallout 3. Not in so much of like, because obviously the Fallout franchise had existed beforehand, but I feel like because 3 was made by Bethesda and it was kind of designed around the 360 before the PC, and so like they were introducing it to just like an entirely new audience, like a way bigger audience that they probably ever had on the PC as a result. I always think that Bioshock 1 kind of prepped people in regards to sort of, hey, it's science fiction, but it's not like Star Wars or like it's not nothing far future. it's kind of a bit more like, I mean, I guess you could say Bioshock is post-apocalyptic. It is a city that is in ruin and has gone like to shreds essentially. And obviously it does all the 1950s kitsch stuff. Like it has, you know, like all the advertisements are about, you know, oh, drink these tonics and get superpowers and stuff like that. And it's all done in the style of like advertising of the time, and everybody's obviously dressed appropriately. And then
I never even thought about that, but yeah, you're so right. Like the whole like Evolve Today commercials are basically just like the little Vault Boy ads.
Oh yeah.
I never even thought about that.
No, and so I always think that there's just this thing of, you know, I think even if Bioshock had never come out, like Fallout 3 probably still would have done pretty well, but I just think that Bioshock 1 is just one of those games that just is like, changes like kind of the mental chemistry of a lot of, especially gamers of that time, because I think, especially people my age, like they were coming out of like the GameCube era where it was mostly like Mario and Zelda and stuff, and it was just like, well, I want something a little bit more mature and a little bit more like heady than what I'm used to. And Bioshock just perfectly preps you for that, I think.
And even mechanically, I think like Bioshock is probably many people's. It was my first, like I say in quotes, like immersive sim.
Oh yeah,
and in the same sense that like Fallout 3 was like my first real RPG, I think.
Oh yeah, like
yeah,
and I think as well that they both kind of lean more on the FPS side, as like Fallout 3 especially, because like the entire VAT system is built around kind of the perspective of a first-person shooter, but by highlighting, you know, different body parts and stuff like, you know, it's a really neat sort of well, I say modernization, but it's a really neat adaptation of how that old system worked in the PC games, but making it work in an FPS. Bioshock's exactly the same, where it's like, you know, it wasn't the first person, you know, immersive sim, because immersive sim's been first person basically since their inception. But this was the one that made it feel more like an FPS game, but then started to sprinkle in those elements of, hey, elements react, you can electrify pools of water, you can melt ice, you can like think of systems as kind of like, they're not just like single buttons that you can press, they do overlap with each other. Like I always think of the security system stuff in the first game, which they do better here, I always think, where it's just like, oh, you can just pull, you know, one of the turrets that usually attacks you, you can hack them and they'll work for you instead. And it almost becomes a thing of like, oh, I don't have to play the game lethally if I don't want to. I could let like minions do that. Like it's this kind of, you have a lot more strategy in how you want to approach stuff in an immersive simmy kind of way than you really did sort of around the time of like Quake or whatever. Because I mean, Halo kind of had a little bit of that just because the levels were so massive, but then this is like the next step on from that, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean totally, and like, you know, this will be like the last positive thing I think I have to say about Bioshock, because I really don't like Bioshock very much.
Interesting. Okay,
but like, yeah, in that regard, I mean, Bioshock blew my mind when I first played it for that exact reason. I was like, what? You can interact with the game outside of just shooting stuff, and like in clever and unique ways. And in the same sense of Fallout 3 being my first RPG, and like I remember that when in Fallout 3 there's that one guy right at the beginning of the game at Megaton, the first town you go to. He's like, hey, do you want to blow up the town? I will never forget being like, this game lets you do that? What the fuck? Yeah. But like in hindsight, both of those things are like, I don't want to say like babies first, but like there's just something they're so simplistic in hindsight that like, yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with them being that simplistic, but like they take a lot of elements that the genres that they're taking from utilized, but using it in such a in a lesser way. But I don't know if that's necessarily like a bad thing. It's just when looking back at it, it feels less impressive. You know what I mean?
No, I do. And it's something that like I think most people have had to grapple with both Fallout 3 and Bioshock over the years. I mean, I kind of do have a question to ask about the game that we're talking about today, so just to quickly do so. Hey, folks, welcome to... Nearly 20 minutes into the episode, let's introduce. Hi, folks. Welcome to Bullet Time, the video game podcast that analyzes the shooters that miss their marks. Returning once again is me, James. Also, back on the mic, although not without Kevin this time, because unfortunately he had some real life stuff to get to. But back in the cage is Spots from the YouTube channel Sputnik34. Hello.
Hello. We came in with the hardest cold open since Tarantino, baby.
Oh boy, guys. Yeah, I was gonna ask. So, you're not a massive fan of Bioshock. Are you? I feel like we're probably the same in this, and I feel like everyone's kind of the same with this. Do you like Bioshock 2 more than Bioshock 1?
Okay. The answer is yes.
Right.
But Bioshock is a series that peaks at a 6 out of 10, and Bioshock 2 is a 6 out of 10.
Okay, that is. Ooh, all right. This might be a fun episode then, because I'm a lot warmer on Bioshock 2 than I think. Yeah, and I guess I can dig into it a little bit. But no, I to kind of circle back to what we were talking to. Yeah, Bioshock is one of those games that I've gone like my opinions changed on it a lot. Like when it came out in 2007, the year of FPS games, because it comes out the same year as Halo 3, Call of Duty 4, Crysis, Mass Effect, Portal, Team Fortress 2. All these like really big FPS games.
Didn't
like
Half-Life 2 come out that year too?
The Orange Box did. So episode 2 came out
God.
for that. Yeah, so Portal came out, Team Fortress 2 came out. Like, but you also get stuff like Mass Effect came out that year, Uncharted 1 came out that year. So it's like basically it's the year that kind of demonstrates just how huge the FPS genre is, like as a result at this time. And it's funny because we talked about this on another episode, and I suppose I should say right at the beginning of this episode of this isn't like a. So this has kind of ended up being the world's shortest mini series that this episode is going to be part of, because we're talking about 2010's Bioshock 2 on this episode, but then on the next one we're talking about the Bureau XCOM Declassified, which those are the two games that were made by 2K Marin. The only two games they ever made, funnily enough.
Oh, so, wow.
Yeah. So this is the 2K Marin mini series, I guess. I didn't come up with a name for it. I mean, funnily enough, though, we're also we're covering The Darkness at some point as well, which were also like 2K published games, but made by completely different developers. So I guess
that's
maybe
a game I need to play at some point.
Oh yeah, no,
I've never even touched them.
Either game I would say is worth giving a go. They are really interesting, but and I would say so that's the thing as well. The Darkness one comes out exactly the same year as Bioshock, and what I say on that episode is that like, because I think Bioshock when it came out, and so like I would have been 16 when it came out. I had never played an FPS game like that. It would have been my first quote immersive sim, and I adored it. I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, not so much the twists and stuff like that. I think that's the kind of the tarnished legacy of that game, is that like its huge pop-off moment is something that's so kind of stupid in hindsight, of the crazy taxi arrow was the bad guy all along, and they told you to do all the bad things because that's what video games do, and then make fun of you for doing it. But like The Darkness kind of doesn't do that. It's a lot more mature in how it like subverts stuff. Like, it is a game about, oh, you play as a hitman who has like demonic powers, but that's not like, we're gonna show you like how sad this guy's life is, and like, you know, the very small moments of happiness that you get, and like even how the world is rendered. It, because it's done by Starbreeze, who had done like Escape from Butcher Bay and like stuff like that. They were very good at kind of doing this sort of, I want to call it like low resolution photorealism of humans do look like humans, and how they kind of animate and act is very like, you know, motion capture and stuff. But because it's the 360 era and like polygon counts and textures are so low res, it looks like you're watching like handy cam footage of, you know, somebody on like an old shitty SD camera basically uploaded to YouTube.
It was like the back rooms before the back rooms.
Yeah, no, and like the darkness one, and like I won't repeat so much of it because obviously we go over it in the episode, but like you're constantly traveling between different locations on the subway, and it feels like, you know, subways are like, you know, what do they call it, like transient places. Like nobody lives in a, like, subways are what you you take those to move to other places. Like the back rooms are kind of like, you know, nobody's meant to stay in the back rooms. You move through them to get to somewhere else. And so it does have this kind of genuinely eerie and kind of like sad, like not upsetting, just sad feeling to it, in a way that like Bioshock is still very much like a quote stupid video game, but then does the thing of, it has the pretensions of, oh, you know, our world is based on the writings of like Ayn Rand and like the objectivist movement. Our main character, you know, the boss of the game is kind of like Walt Disney mixed with, you know, like the guy from Atlas Shrugged. Yeah, like, you know, and like when they're doing all these. Yeah,
I respect Bioshock for that, but yeah, I mean, I think the twist elevates a lot of that game, to be honest, but
sure,
the writing is definitely hit or miss in Bioshock 1.
Oh yeah, and I think it's also one of those things that it's just aged terribly, because it's every boss character that you fight is somebody with a mental illness, essentially. It's very old-fashioned video game, old-fashioned, you know, survival horror movie kind of thing, where it's like, we're meant to pretend that this game is kind of like high art, but it's not. It's still very schlocky. The way that I kind of summed it up on the episode that we do on the Bureau is that, in my mind, Bioshock like perfectly sums up the term middlebrow, where it's like an elevated hamburger, essentially, where it's still a fucking video game and very sort of stupid, but it has these kind of pretensions that it's trying to say something and it's a lot smarter than it is. And whereas The Darkness is actually that, it is a game that has a lot to say and it's a lot cleverer than most games of its time, but still also gets to revel in being an FPS game where you constantly dual wield pistols and you push the triggers in your Xbox controller to emulate the feeling of like blasting two guns in your hand at the same time. Bioshock is like, oh, we're going to give you like a big ass machine gun, but then a character's also going to talk to you about like market theory. And it's like, this is...
I have never seen anybody systematically just take down Bioshock just like you have right now. That was brutal.
But that's the thing. Like, I liked it. And then like when I grew older and I started to get into like kind of games blogs, and you kind of have that thing of you're a lot snootier and you're just like, oh, these games suck. Like, you know, oh, they think that, like what's it called? Spec Ops The Line kind of, that came out in 2013. Like, it came out the same year as The Last of Us. And at that point I was very kind of like, oh, video game trying to tell me that I'm a bad guy for doing bad things. Oh, it's not going to work on me, Dumbo, kind of thing. Like, you know, like the fact that I can see the animatronics at the Hall of Presidents means that I don't have to, like, you know...
take it seriously.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking of suspend my disbelief, basically.
Right.
And Bioshock
right.
Infinite, funnily enough, comes out that same year, and I'm like... I think that is what completely sours me on Bioshock at that time as well. It was like, why did I ever like this? This is stupid.
Oh, I know we're talking about Bioshock 2, but I just need to, just real quick on Infinite.
No, go ahead.
I think that the story that game is telling, like the outside of like the whole political angle, the story of like someone discovering like time travel and finding alternate realities and like fucking up in one reality and creating like a whole like life in a separate reality, and those two realities coming together and like and resolving that the way it does. That story in Bioshock Infinite, I think, is really good. Okay. But all the other weird political stuff that you can extrapolate from it, the kind of flubbed like, well, both sides are kind of screwed up.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then on top of everything, that game has an exquisite gameplay loop that is maybe 20 seconds long that they just hold for the whole game. And I don't think that I hate a game more than Infinite just because, well, that's not true, but I really do hate Infinite because
Sure.
like it's so boring. It
Yeah.
gets tedious 3.5 hours in, and then you still have like 10 hours left. It's
Oh, God,
unbelievable how much I dislike that game, even though I think the main story is very well told.
See, I'm kind of the opposite on Infinite. Not as in like, oh, I think that all the nationalism stuff, because I kind of agree with you where it's like, it feels like Ken Levine only really has one story in his pocket, which is, oh, what if you go to a city where it was all like one ideology and like that led it to ruin? It's like, but Infinite isn't really that. Their whole entire thing is that like they're super like I can't remember what episode I said on, but it's like Infinite is such a stupid game because it's like, oh, could you imagine going somewhere that was so nationalist that they were racist? And it's like, this game is set in 1910. Are you fucking joking? Everywhere, like nearly, even like the blue states in the United States were like that, bud. Like, come the fuck, like it is so.
I didn't even think about that, but that's so funny.
No, and he goes like, oh, but the city is so cool because it's like suspended up in the air by. Yeah, like the moment he gets into the science fiction stuff is like, I checked out big time. I was like, this is. It always reminds me of, and this is such a weird analogy, but it's like, you remember? Have you ever seen the Harry Potter films? And it's okay if you have.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like everyone has, even before, like, you know, we knew what we knew about J.K. Rowling. But
yeah, but what about Harry Potter? Oh,
so
yeah,
you know in the third one where his Lady May or Hermione or whatever her name is goes, oh yeah, like something really bad has happened, like a character has died and they're like at a point of no return, and then his mate goes, oh, don't worry, I have a stopwatch that can travel back in time and can just completely undo this. And so, like, the complete, like, there's no longer any sort of threat in that film, like, or any of the films going on from there, because it's like, well, then, they're never really at risk, are they, if she has a fucking stopwatch that can travel back in time and undo any mistakes?
Yeah, and the you know how easy it would have been for J.K. Rowling to just been like, oh, and Hermione said, if I use it one more time, it'll break and we won't be able to use this again. And that was the last one it ever made. I found it.
No.
Like, you know how easy it would have been for her to just write that?
Yeah, but it's like, you're already working in a really big fantasy concept of, oh, there's a secret world and people have magic and blah, blah, blah. Like, you can fill entire books of trying to explore this world and fill that out. And then somebody just says, oh, by the way, I have time travel. No, that's like that should be its own entire book series. Like, don't put time travel in another story where you have like magic fantasy and stuff. Like, those are like two really big concepts that you shouldn't really cross over. And Bioshock Infinite, it was like that of, oh, we've ran out of steam on the whole kind of, what if America was racist in the air idea? What if it was literally just the opposite of Rapture, where instead of being under the ocean and being about like, you know, fuck you, got mine, every man for himself, what if it was up into the air, but like everyone that there loved each other, but like in a way of, we really love being American and we're like massively xenophobic to the outsider? And it's like, oh right, so it's literally just it's a photo negative of the first game that you did, and then halfway through he goes, oh, I've run out of juice on this. What was it? What if it's about parallel worlds and time travel? To the extent of, it's funny when I talk about this game, like I start to hate it again. But it's like, the game ends with a thing of, oh, actually, this was an alternate universe to Bioshock, and they're kind of like mirror opposites of each other. Okay, that's fine. Up until they then go to a lighthouse, and the fucking female character in that game looks at you and says, oh, by the way, yeah, every world is Bioshock. Every video game is Bioshock. There is always a damsel in distress, and there's always, like, an end point you have to go to. It's like, are you fucking joking? Like, are you so up your own fucking ass that you've basically said that every game is Bioshock? What the fuck? No, like, it is...
And
like,
that's why Bioshock 2 is the best one, because Ken Levine didn't write it.
Yeah, that's a nice segue to say then that, yeah, of the Bioshock series, 2 is definitely the high point of all of them. That said, you wouldn't give it higher than a 6 out of 10.
Nope.
Wow. See, I don't know. This game is a solid. I would say this is a solid 8 to sometimes a 9 out of 10 for me.
Oh my god.
Oh, we can dig into this a little bit.
I
But
think
guess,
it's so funny because the last episode I was hardcore defending Scorn, and now it's your job to defend Bioshock.
No, I mean, I'll be interested in hearing your thoughts. I mean, I guess, is it because it is so, like, you know, whatever they do with it, whatever they add to it, it is still Bioshock at the end of the day, like, is what your issue.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, mostly yes, I think.
Well, walk me through it a little bit, but I guess I could ask as well, like, this isn't your first time playing. You've played Bioshock 2 before, like, playing it before.
Yeah, I played it when it came out, and then I think I tried playing it again sometime in between the time that I played it again for oh no, I played it for a video one of my videos a couple years ago.
Okay.
I played Bioshock 1 and 2 back to back like 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. That was the last time I played it, and then I played a good portion of it again for this, just as a quick refresher.
That's fair. And so, like, did your opinion ever change? Like, did you initially like it and then didn't like it after the fact, or like the first time you played it, you were like, "This isn't very good"?
Well, no. So I think when I first played Bioshock 1 and Bioshock 2, I would have given them both like an 8.
Okay.
And then when I played Bioshock Infinite, I would have had an 8 with a giant asterisk of the gameplay is a 3, the story is an 8.
Okay.
But and then whenever I went back and replayed Bioshock 1, because I played Bioshock 1 more than I played Bioshock 2.
Oh,
but
sure.
Whenever I went back and played 1, every time I played it, I was like, this feels not good. And Bioshock 2 feels better than 1 at the very least.
Oh yeah.
That's a significant reason why I think it's the highest one.
No, I think that's probably why 2 is so kind of high on yeah, I think 2 is better than 1 and 3 as well, and it is just purely down to the fact that, and it's funny because there's moments of Infinite where I go, the shooting's doing something interesting, and I always thought it was squandered potential, the Skyrail system, because the way that they described it in interviews was like, oh, this is meant to be like the Warthog from Halo, as in, we're going to have these really large arenas and maps with like multiple groups of enemies around them. And the idea is that like, hey, if you want to quickly get into or out of firefights, just hop on a rail and like just get over there like as quickly as possible. Or hey, if this is like, you know, getting too hot for you, or if you just want to kind of recoup, just ride the rails for a little bit. And because they're so high up in the air as well, it basically kind of gives you like a bird's eye view of the map to see like where anybody is, which is like, okay, this is a clever idea. You'd play the game and that's never like properly utilized at all.
It's strictly like you know, in a weird way, it's kind of like how Doom Eternal does movement.
Oh yeah.
It's because like the movement or the rail system in Infinite is strictly like a positioning mechanic.
Oh, of course.
That is like occasionally used for like for only I feel like occasionally like for what you were just talking about for like a bird's eye view of, and you can like, well, I don't know, it does have that cool system of like jumping off and like hitting somebody, but that's again strictly positioning. It's barely ever for anything other than that. And in the same way that Doom Eternal, the dash system is kind of just like a quick way to like get out of a tight spot. And in that regard, Infinite, I think, but like I said earlier, like Infinite, its gameplay loop is so good, but like they never change it. It's the whole it's the whole like, game.
It's the weird thing of like, and like you look at the development of Bioshock Infinite, and obviously I don't know if we'll ever do an episode of Bullet Time on it. Granted, there's like so much you could go into, but that was a game that was in development hell for so long, and they ended up throwing so many bodies onto it, including like the Unreal Engine guys and like guys from Epic who had worked on Gears of War were thrown onto this project just to get it over the line. And they were trying to overhaul that combat system all the way along. And the whole point was, yeah, this is going to be like Halo. Yeah, it's going to be like this, but also still with the Bioshock thing of, you have your supplementary powers, which are just meant to kind of like do area of effects stuff. It's meant to kind of like change the shape of the landscape, while at the same time you're using a gun in all the different ways that you do in an FPS of, you know, pistol for close quarters, snipers for, far away kind of stuff. And so there's a lot of interesting ideas at play, but they just it never coalesces in a way that at least I will give to Bioshock 2, which is it never gets that ambitious, but
No.
replaying Bioshock 2, there is a kind of a small thing to it that I did end up really appreciating, which is that at times it does feel a little bit like a little tower defense wave-based game, which is quite neat. I don't know if you had that feeling on it.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, for sure. I kind of forget how often that feeling comes up, but there is quite a bit of like hold your ground and just kind of like defend for a little bit.
So it's all the little sister stuff, and I guess we could start there in regards to
yeah.
saying like, so Bioshock 1 comes out in 2007, and it's obviously this big old success for 2K and for Ken Levine, and I forgot to mention this as well when we were talking about like Fallout 3 and stuff, but also just Bioshock of just like, I feel like Bioshock is also like the first quote like prestige game of this time of, hey, this isn't just like a stupid FPS game. This is a game that has something to say and it has like a brain in its head and stuff like that. And we were meant to kind of treat it as it was this sort of like elevated work. And
yeah, it was definitely the first game that I can remember like a significant portion of like the mainstream being like video games can be art, even though I was like a couple years ago having just beaten Silent Hill 2 being like, hello, what about this one?
Literally, like the fucking year before was Shadow of the Colossus on the PS, or like 2 years before was Shadow of the Colossus on the fucking PS2. Like,
yeah.
Or like Metal Gear Solid Snake here. But that was the thing, like, I mean, I know I recycle points from every episode, but that's why people love this podcast. But the whole thing with Prestige is just kind of like, it was very sort of American press focus and a lot of kind of like American developer focus. Because yeah, like in Japan you had like Furito Uemeda, who was doing like Ico and Shadow of the Colossus, and then you obviously had Kojima, who was doing all that stuff as well. Team Silent, obviously, they were like really punching above their weight in regards to games that had something to say, like,
straight killing it.
Yeah,
strictly killing it.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was one of those things that like a lot of press and journalists at the time just didn't really give them much attention, because it was just kind of like, well, we don't really know what the Japanese games industry is like, because getting translators out there and stuff is kind of a big ass problem. And like in the case of people like Nintendo, they don't even like talking about how they make their games because they're still like incredibly secretive about that stuff. Versus in the US is a lot more braggadocious. I mean, like you had fucking John Carmack put out an advert that says John Romero was going to make you his bitch for fucking Daikatana. Like,
man, what an ad campaign for that game of all of the games.
No, exactly. A game that ended up being like an absolute piece of dog shit. Like, that's what it's all. But like, you had him, and then like at Valve you had Gabe Newell, and like you had Warren Spector obviously on Days. Like, all these kind of games that you could put like somebody's name to in the same way that, like you said, Tarantino earlier, like that's a director that you go, oh, he has like a specific style and tone to the stuff that he makes that like I see throughout all of his films, and I would want to see what it like Inglourious Basterds was him saying, I'm finally doing a war movie, and people were like, cool, I want to see what that looks like.
Right.
And at the time they were really trying to do that in the games industry of just like, this isn't just an FPS game. This is an FPS game being made by Ken Levine, a somebody that we were meant to take seriously because he had worked on System Shock 2. I mean, he had worked at Looking Glass at a bunch of stuff, but like Irrational were the people who took over System Shock 2, and obviously that was like a huge cult game, but because it was locked to PC and quite advanced PCs at the time, it was just never going to hit a wider audience. And his whole thing was, I want to bring that and put it on consoles with Bioshock, but then I also want to, I want to read some books. I want to put some book smarts in the game as well. I want to talk about something a little bit bigger than, just shoot a bad guy. Mm. And this is also the time of just like, you had G4 TV and like kind of the burgeoning sort of, video journalist kind of video interview stuff for games, all pushed by Jeff Keighley. And Jeff loves an auteur. And Ken was like one of the first guys that he really latched onto of Ken, please tell me about your game. How did you make this game? You know, how did you... Despite the fact that it's made by like 100 odd people across multiple companies, Ken became the face of Bioshock, you know?
Yeah, it is unfortunate because like I don't dislike Ken Levine like as a person. I think
same.
But like it does seem is it disingenuous for him to be like the face of BioShock for that exact like he I don't think he had nearly as much like creative control or like strict involvement as I think he gets a lot of credit for. Especially because he was what was his position on System Shock?
Oh, I think he was so on the original System Shock, I'm not sure. I think he was a quality assurance tester or something. But on BioShock, on System Shock 2, I think he was lead dev.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no,
well, maybe I'm wrong. My bad.
No, but I think System Shock 2 is so like indebted to the first one that they didn't really want to color outside the lines in the way that they sort of do with BioShock. You know?
Yeah. BioShock is this weird. This is part. Okay, I will cover a point as to why I don't think BioShock is all that great.
Sure.
It's BioShock 1 and 2, and I guess 3, even though 3 is basically just a first-person shooter.
Yeah.
BioShock 1 and 2 they're like in this really uncomfortable sweet spot where it's like not quite an immersive sim, and it's not quite a first-person shooter. And it's just like the worst of both worlds because the combat in BioShock 1 and 2, more so 1, is so like clunky and weightless. It just never feels good to shoot anything in those games.
How would you feel if I say something crazy? Which is that...
Oh no.
And this is something that I was kind of thinking of a little bit with kind of like, especially on when we do bullet time, and it's like, yeah, these are all FPS games, but like what else do they kind of do? I've always kind of thought about I say always, just kind of replaying Bioshock and stuff. I've kind of been thinking of it more that it's got a lot in common with the survival horror.
Ooh.
I feel like I'm watching, footage of like when they crash cars and to see where all the crumple zones are. But that's with you collapsing in on yourself as like called Bioshock, a survival horror.
Okay, look. I love me a good survival horror game.
I know.
And I'm not gonna say that BioShock doesn't have roots in horror because it obviously does.
It's a horror game. It's a spooky. Yeah. It's a spooky ass game.
But I don't want to gatekeep survival horror, but I'm gonna say that BioShock is not a survival horror game.
I'll sort of explain my thoughts just in regards to there's not a ton of resource management except that bullets are a premium in the BioShock games in a way that most FPSs they're not. You do have to think a little bit about rationing your health supplies and your your magic, your mana, your Eve and stuff like that to kind of the stuff like that. It's not like a Resident Evil style game where you constantly keep going back to the same rooms of the mansion, but the way the arenas are composed is that it has got the kind of Metroid thing of, hey, you've unlocked a key, so now you've unlocked some doors. Hey, you've done this and this. And it can use that as a basis in the same way as a survival horror of, this room is safe because I've done a thing. It's no longer safe again. Oh, they've introduced all this kind of risk again. Oh, damn it. And so, it's not a survival horror insofar as, it doesn't follow the form of function of, Silent Hill 2. But you could see that maybe they come from a similar kind of origin point.
Yes, I will give you that. They definitely took inspiration and utilized some themes and central mechanics from survival horror for sure.
Yeah.
But I remember before the survival horror revival with Capcom and everything, I remember in the lowest point of horror gaming, which is around Dead Space 3 up until Resident Evil 7.
Yeah.
Have you done a video? By the way, have you done an episode on Dead Space 3?
Not yet. No, we can put it on the list.
Oh,
we don't,
man.
Well, we haven't done a ton of third-person shooters, is the thing. We mostly do a lot of FPS stuff, and I think it's just purely from what I was saying about, the thing that, I find the most interesting is that in this era, the FPS was, 2007, the FPS is so powerful in regards to, we're making if any new game we make has to be an FPS game because that's the most popular genre. Like,
yes,
Bioshock may have been better if it was an old-fashioned style Resident Evil like survival horror, but
1,000. Yeah, I mean, this beyond my bias. I think 100%. Yeah, but in that time frame of Dead Space 3 to Resident Evil 7, I would look for like horror games, and like it would be like top 10 best horror games of all time. And Bioshock would always be there, and I'm like, why is this game? Why is this game here?
What's a spooky?
Like, just because a game's spooky don't mean it's a horror game. I don't know.
The skeletons in Bioshock. It does my favorite thing of environmental storytelling, which you find a skeleton on a toilet and you go, "Damn, what happens?"
What happened?
Damn, what happened? I always think it's funny when they put like Half-Life and Half-Life 2 on like the best horror games lists, and it's like, those aren't actually, like, those games aren't scary. I don't think.
There was a time frame where survival horror and just horror games in general were in the pits.
Oh god, yeah, like RE4 technically brought them back, but also massively changed them forever, you know? So.
Yeah.
And then, fortunately, we got Frictional. They put out all those cool Amnesia games, and then Alien Isolation came out, and then Capcom said, why don't we do that again? And we got RE7, and then
everything was right with the world again.
but RE7's a funny one, because that's like an FPS game as well. Not to the extent of Bioshock, but, you know, you can see, like, there's bits of DNA that cross over between them in a weird way.
Yeah, and getting back to the original point, like...
Sure.
I'm not going to say Bioshock isn't a horror game because it technically is, but it's just it's not. You know what I mean? It's not.
But like, sure.
But no. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, by the time you get to Bioshock 2, that's like completely out of its system, though. There's no like. That is more of a straight FPS. Like, there's very little survival horror in that game.
Yes, I mean, not even counting the fact that they make you like an overpowered monster man. Even ignoring that fact, which, by the way, that leads into one of the highlights of the entire Bioshock franchise, which is the drill dash. Are you kidding me? That I remember playing Bioshock 2 for my original video a couple years ago. And that drill dash is like one of the only attacks in the entire franchise that feels amazing to use. There is actual weight behind that. It's so satisfying to like just go across an entire room in a second and just kill somebody in like a snap of your fingers. It's so good.
Yeah. No, well, I'll say this to set the table a little bit, which is just that like, so Bioshock 1 comes out, it's a massive success to the extent of originally they had only developed it for the 360 in mind. It got a PC port at the same time as well, but like it had done so well the 2K commissioned a PS3 version, which they hadn't had at the time. Irrational couldn't work on that because they had then gone full steam ahead basically into what the next Bioshock game was going to be. So they put together a smaller team within Irrational to work on this PS3 version, which then comes out a year later. That little team that they put together then gets span off completely from Irrational, and they become the formation of 2K Marin. Mm-hmm. And what 2K basically decides is that, hey, Bioshock, that's a franchise. You know, we got some juice here. Why don't we have two studios working on games in tandem? So while Irrational work on what becomes a fucking years-long project trying to get Infinite out the door, the team that does the PS3 port then goes full steam ahead onto working on Bioshock 2, basically. So quite a lot of the original staff from that game do come over as well. Like, maybe the biggest name on it is, like, again, talking about the whole kind of Ken Levine sort of auteur theory thing. The only kind of big name associated with is a guy called Jordan Thomas, who's, like, he's been with that company for a long time, but then he kind of went off and did his own thing. Then came back to work on Bioshock Infinite to get it over the line, and then since has gone on elsewhere. But yeah, they grew that team out and basically started working on Bioshock 2. And I would say that like it's one of those sequels that is, I would say it is a very fan-focused game because like the big selling point is, hey, those cool, Scooby-Doo diver costume guys that are on the box art of the last game? You get to be that guy. And
Whee!
and even though like Bioshock 1 obviously ends with you becoming a big daddy for all of like 10 minutes and it feels like shit. No,
it
this
really
is
does not feel good.
This is tuned from the beginning that, yeah, you feel you are a big daddy. And I would say, yeah, to go to your whole sort of point about the drill bash and stuff like that, the combat in this has got juice.
It's so much. It's like, I was just talking about the drill arm, but like, generally speaking, the combat in Bioshock 2 is like leagues better than the first one.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, there's something about the first game's combat, which, I mean, I guess you could say is a benefit because, like, especially if you want to take, like, the horror angle, the combat in Bioshock 1 is a lot, like, slower, and the reloading animations take forever. Every gun in Bioshock 1 takes, like, as long as it takes to read Atlas Shrugged. That's how long each reload animation in Bioshock 1 feels like. But, like, Bioshock 2, I mean, it's a lot more arcadey, and I think it just works better for, like, that whole, like, system, because, like, every reload animation is like a GoldenEye one. It, like, your gun goes off screen, and then it's done, and you're reloaded, and you're just shooting stuff again. And I think, like, I could be wrong, but it feels like the combat, the way that they choreograph the combat, I don't know if that's the right way to word it, but that's what I'm going with. The way they choreograph the combat in Bioshock 1 and 2, in terms of like the enemy types and the amount of enemies that you're dealing with, it doesn't change that much. Maybe it's a little bit more aggressive in 2, but like it's not enough for me to think that like 2 is just better being a little bit quicker.
No,
because, you know what I mean?
Yeah, 2 is an interesting one, because I was going to say that it's kind of like, it changes the threat a little bit in regards to, in the first one, you are genuinely, like, it has got a bit of that survival horror thing to, like, at your weakest, all you have to defend yourself is a short-range melee weapon, which is a big-ass wrench. So, like, you're putting yourself at risk fighting people. At least in Bioshock 2, like, the lowest risk, the weapon when you're on your back foot is a big-ass drill, which still has some reach on it. But yeah, like, they don't throw like, you would expect, because you're a heavier guy, they're going to throw more enemies at you. Sort of, to an extent, it's more that just kind of they change the shape of the threat a lot more. There's a lot more enemies that have guns than there are in 1. Like, there's less... like, out of the gate, there's less melee users and there's more people with pistols and stuff, which, obviously makes sense. But then, also, the shape of risk also changes in a way of, like, very rarely are you the person who is at, like, are you the person who's going to, like, take any harm? It's more the fact that because you're now playing as a big daddy, they have now kind of added this additional layer to the game, which is protecting the little sisters. And so it becomes, it's not quite an escort mission, because it hasn't got the thing of, like, oh, the AI's clipping against the wall again. Oh, dang it. Like, stand on the button, you idiot. No, it's literally just you set them up, like, next to, like, something that's full of Adam, and it turns into a little wave defense section. Like, there's little arenas that you can't leave. So you have to set up, like, your turret defenses and stuff like that. And again, like, I would say that this is why I would give this game, like, an 8 to potentially a 9 of just, like, I genuinely quite enjoyed those little sections. They have the issue that Bioshock does of just, they never quite give you enough resources to make it, like, that much fun. But when the cogs are gelling together, that's, like, really interesting. And in a way of, like, Bioshock 1 never has moments like that. Or, like, even kind of games that it's contemporaries with doesn't really do a ton of that.
Sure, I would make a argument in the sense that those parts are fun, but in my opinion, they suffer the same issue that Bioshock always suffers, where they have a cool idea, but then never do anything with it. Like, like those segments, if I remember correctly, they're neat. I don't dislike those segments, but they never change much. It's like, you have a little sister, she goes and does the thing, and then you just kill a bunch of guys, and then you pick her up, and then you go do it again. And then, that's every time,
No, it's the kind of the FPS problem of just kind of like they don't change the situation, but what they do is they keep changing arenas each time. So like you might get a little bit more cover, you might get some more opportunities, but there's also more threats of like say the first few times that they introduce it, you're kind of in like locked room scenarios. So like there's only like potentially 2 lanes that enemies can come through. But then towards the end, you're just like in completely open arenas. So it's just like shit, enemies could be coming from anywhere. But I guess, yeah, like the shooting never becomes as kinetic in a way of like, say, Doom Eternal, what you mentioned earlier, that you genuinely get to appreciate that. Like it always still, because it still has that Bioshock issue of everything feels a little bit stiff. It never...
Well, a little bit?
Okay, because the combat still feels stiff as fuck. You don't really appreciate it, I guess. But yeah, like... sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's I want to make it clear, like I don't
No, sure.
hate that. It's just I like it's just frustrating to me because like I do see like so many good ideas sprinkled out in Bioshock 1, 2, and 3, but like
Oh yeah.
they just they just kind of have the idea once and then they just repeat it ad nauseum, and in that regard that's kind of disappointing, at least in my eyes. Like
sure.
there's not even like I could so clearly see like a tower defense segment where you're like, I'm not a game designer, so this may not be a good idea, but you put the little sister down, and the game for whatever reason like strips you of your weapons, but like your only option is like like those missile turrets. Your only option is to like use those and like use your plasmid to like capture them and throw them at enemies. That's like your only means of defense. They don't even do that. You know what I mean?
No,
that would at least be like some kind of like neat little spice up. You know what I'm saying?
It's the thing that kind of does undo it a little bit because, yeah, the game gives you like a lot more options for strategy this time around. Like, again, hacking is like being redesigned. So it's just like in the first game, you do it and it's like you kind of use it as a pace breaker, but it's so stupid. Whereas in this is that they've made it as active as the combat, where it's a timing puzzle that happens in real time. Like
I love that so much.
Oh yeah, no, I absolutely adore
especially in
it.
comparison to the first game. Dear God.
Yeah, the first game feels like a Flash game plugin. Like it's just something that they got off like Armored Games and said, "Yeah, this is the hacking mini game." It's like, oh. Whereas in this, it's like this feels like not only does it feel cohesive to the world, where it's just they look like big cathode ray tube, like television bulbs and stuff like that, and just it's like a kind of you see the radio dial bounce back and forth, so it's almost like you're trying to tune it into the right frequency. But it's just so much more active. I never even
thought about that. That's such a good way of looking at it.
Yeah, it's just so much more active now, and like because it takes place during the world, yeah, you're at risk of, hey, you can hack something, but you're going to get attacked by enemies while this is happening, and if they land a hit on you, you have to do it all over again. And so again, like you get that tiny bit of like cool risk reward that you want from FPS games, which is, well, having like cheaper ammo or literally having drones that will fight for me will make this so much easier. But then basically the right choice in all of this stuff is to build up your armory like first and then do the little sister stuff, which I guess that goes to your point of it is always kind of the same thing again and again. And I would say that like at least where good FPS games kind of master that, like Call of Duty 4 or like something like that, you never really notice the loop of or even Halo, I think, is a good example, where you never really notice that you are just kind of doing the same thing again and again.
Mm-hmm.
This either just because of like
Call of Duty at least has the benefit of its games lasting 5 hours, so like there's
that
at
is
least...
true. Yeah, no, this is stretching the gum out a little bit, and I guess that's just down to the fact that it's Bioshock and these kind of pretensions of being like an RPG as well. But like, yeah, this does kind of drag its heels a little bit. Like I think of when you fight when you basically, it's like an old fashioned cowboy town, but obviously it's in Rapture. It's called like Pauper's. It's not Pauper's Drop. It's the one that's after that. It's the one where you fight the guy Simon Wells, who's like a crazy pastor. Like he used to be a.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he used to be, and then he's gone completely mad. But then you go into like this old like dilapidated hotel to like listen to all of his different audio logs and try and find him. And that bit just goes on and on and on. And like, it's just becomes so boring. You know, Siren's Alley is what I was trying to think of.
That's, like, I mean, that's both a positive and, I mean, not that part specifically, but like, I think overall, like, both a positive and a negative about Bioshock 2 is that there aren't as many locations, but like, if you like look at the level design is, each level is huge. They range 3 to 5 levels, like tall wise. And like they're smaller floor to floor, but like they go on for so long. And I think, depending on how you want to look at it, I think that is pretty impressive. Like the level design, even if it does drag, I think the level design is pretty impressive for what they were trying to go for. Also, I don't know, when you replayed Bioshock 2 for this, did you play the game with or without the little cheat arrow?
I think I played it without, funnily enough.
Okay. That's how I never played those games without that arrow on until when I played them for my video a couple years ago.
Right.
That was the first time I ever played them with it off. That is, if you're gonna play Bioshock, you gotta play it with that arrow off. It changes. It drastically changes how the game feels. Only in the positive.
Oh yeah, like I think
maybe less. Sorry, I was just gonna say maybe less so in 2, just because it is so huge. Like the levels are so intricate. Maybe like turning it on every once in a while is fine. But in Bioshock 1 specifically, playing that game without the arrow is actually it elevates it to a 6.
2, I think, is I think of that kind of early area when you're in the baths, and it's just like there's a lot of like bright neon signage that just keeps pointing you towards where you need to go. Like the level design is better in 2 in regards to porting you between places, up until when you do the little sister stuff. But that is why they literally give you a stink button that makes a fucking path of like smoke to follow, and it's like, oh, there's where all the Adam is. Go all the way over there, and it's like, cool, I guess. It reminds me a lot of like really old-fashioned FPS games, like Doom, where you just go hunting for the key card. But because it's Bioshock, the key card is, well, sometimes it is literal key cards, but then it's also sometimes like, haha, I've thrown the key into the water, you fuck. And it's like, oh, cool. So you have to go and get the key progress? And stuff like that. Yeah, like, like the Bioshock games are just like so notorious for just like, oh, well, the way ahead should be super clear. Oh, never mind, it's not. Oh, the wall is, the door forward is covered in ice. Go through this theme park level to get a single ability. Because the door that the ability is behind has like a door. It is like has a chair on the doorknob, so you can't open it. So you have to go all the way around. It's very annoying level design, but I'm kind of glad that we're sort of out of that era of Bioshock style. Oh, the door's locked from the other side. Go the long way around.
I'm not optimistic for Judas. I feel like Ken Levine's gonna bring that right back because he's got nothing else.
God, I think I've said this at the end of like nearly every episode we've done recently, but like I'm both ironically and unironically looking forward to Judas. I gotta know what it's like.
I'm curious. I'll say that much. I'm interested to see how it plays, because it's apparently like a roguelike.
Oh yeah, like it's partially like, yeah, when you die, stuff gets like randomly generated a bit. And apparently the way that the plot works is a lot like, obviously Bioshock was all about like, what's your choice? Do you kill him or not? And like, if you kill them, that's it. And if you don't, like, maybe the next level's slightly harder, or they give you a gift or something. It's all very
very surface level stuff in that regard.
Yeah. Which, in fairness, this game's got exactly the same issues to it as well. Like, there's the Mayor of Pauper's Drop, who's like an old jazz singer, and like she remembers who you were in your past life, and there's a bit of that, but like she's also just kind of like, I'm not gonna help you. Like, I work for Sophia Lamb. Like, she's paid me off, blah, 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 so I'm just going to send everybody at you. And then they give you the choice of, like, do you want to kill her or do you want to set her free? And if you set her free, she just goes, you know what, Tin Man? Maybe there is a heart in there after all. And for the last minute of the level, you have 2 overpowered turrets that follow you around. They don't follow you to the next level, though. It's cool, I guess.
I mean, I will say that, like, in that regard, Bioshock 2, I guess, tries to at least be a little bit more subtle with its moral choices. Because,
Yeah.
like, they at least give, like, a substantial, or, you know, in tiers, a substantial amount of information about the person that makes you say, does this person deserve to die? They at least try. In Bioshock 1, it's like, it's literally like, hey, if you kill this guy, you'll get a reward. Or, hey, if you don't kill this guy, you'll get a reward. Do you want to kill him?
Yeah, like Bioshock's even like Bioshock literally just says that. I mean, it's an iconic part of the series at this point, but it's just, oh, do you want to kill a little girl or save her? And it's just like, what? Like, I don't think. I don't think anyone would want to kill a child. And like, Killing Thing was like, I thought that was interesting. I wanted to put people in a mind space of would they kill a child to survive? And it's like, I mean, obviously, so I mean, to be honest, development-wise, there is a story that 2K basically said to him, you can't give players like extra bonuses for killing the little sisters. You have to balance them out. And so like his point got completely neutered by doing so. But it is still like the stupid, it's like, you know, it's the fucking trolley problem thing of just like, oh, would you say the N-word to deactivate like a nuclear bomb? And it's like, these are just the stupidest hypotheticals possible, you know? But
I didn't know about like the limitation that was imposed upon that moral choice.
Oh yeah, 2K. Yeah,
because I was gonna say, like, the only way that would work is like if you didn't kill the little sister, like you got nothing out of it.
Yeah, that would have been the best one. It's just like literally, if you decide to play Bioshock without any power-ups, like you have to. See,
that would have been so good.
See, that's got G's. Like that's like Dishonored.
I'm so annoyed now.
Dishonored 2 does that, and I think is such a brilliant idea of just because obviously in Dishonored 1 you start with like the blink power-up, but then if you want, you don't have to like spec into anything else, and you get an achievement for it. There's like a long-term achievement in Dishonored 2 called like Blood and Iron or something, which is so in that game like you're contacted by the outsider, and he's like, "Do you want your powers back?" And you can literally say, "No, I'm gonna beat this entire game without any of the supernatural powers." And it does genuinely change like the mentality behind that game. Was granted, all the level design in that game is like built in such a way that you can complete it without powers, and it just makes it so much jammier then of like, oh, these powers are genuinely like they do make these levels so much easier as a result because they were balanced for being able to do them without them. But
okay,
yeah,
I'm gonna be 100% real right now. I never throughout all of my years had any real want to play the Dishonored games. I heard they were good, but I was like, I don't know. I'm not super like. It just it doesn't seem like it's gonna appeal to me.
That's
what you just said. I have to play Dishonored 2 now. At least I have to do it. You full on made me want to play that game just with what you just said.
I would play. I would just give Dishonored 1 a quick go just to sort of like get a feel for the world and kind of like that. The one ability that you do always get in Dishonored 1 is like fantastic. Just that blink ability for breaking levels. But like no, Dishonored 2 is just like, yeah, if you want to play completely powerless, you can, and you are like recognized for doing so. Like not just an achievement, but they even recognize it in game. So,
oh, that's cool. Oh, that's so cool.
You know, and I think about that as well in regards to like, you don't really get Dishonored 1 without, like, even if you look at the UIs of them where it's like, the health is red and your quote magic meter is blue, and I know that that's Diablo 2 technically, but like Bioshock's obviously that's trying to do System Shock on the Xbox 360, and then Dishonored goes, well, why don't we try and do Thief on the Xbox 360? But I just think Arcane have just got so much of a better grip on doing immersive sim stuff in a way, but still doing the Xbox. You know, it's still a game that the FPS crowd can play and enjoy, but it's still got.
I was just gonna say that goes back to my like what I was saying earlier, because like Bioshock is in this weird middle ground of like not being really great at either thing.
No,
it's really weird.
Like I think if you were to compare them of like examples of, I don't want to say modernized because that makes it sound like it's an improvement of adapting the immersive sim from a game that can only work on PC with like a keyboard full of buttons and like, CRTs and that kind of, if you like, I don't think it'd be like, this isn't rude, but like PC gamers of that time have a very different mentality to like console gamers, because consoles were usually kind of for a younger audience. And so like everything there's new, but it also has to be simplified a lot, either because of a controller or because like this is your first time playing it. Whereas immersive sims were literally like, those were seen as modernizations of like old ass like D&D. Like fucking the first quote immersive sim game is Ultima Underworld Stygian Abyss, which is a first person RPG.
That's the first immersive sim.
It was made by Origin System, who then like a year later did System Shock.
Oh wow, okay, I genuinely did not know that.
Yeah, so they do that. They do System Shock, then they do Thief, which is like the first polygonal like immersive sim, and then guys begin to split off, and Warren Spector from that company goes on to make Deus Ex. System Shock 2 comes out of that as well. Like all the different Thief games come out of that as well. And one of the founders of Arcane, Raphael Colatanio, I think is the surname, he was a QA guy at Origin Systems, who then went on to, not Origin, sorry, Looking Glass Software, who then went on to find Arcane. And like immersive sims continue on from there. It's so like, it's cool how all these kind of games sort of plug into each other. But it's funny, like his vision for immersive sims on the 360 were still trying to keep it in the realm of like all the sort of systems overlap that Thief had, but mostly just making like the controls really reactive and very snappy feeling. And it has this cool.
They streamlined it in my opinion the correct ways.
Yes,
because Bioshock is like, let's just dumb everything down.
But Bioshock's very reductive in how it's like it adapted stuff, in almost a very kind of snotty way, I would say.
Yeah, and it feels like Bioshock 1 and I'll even say Bioshock 2, just because like it leans much more into just being a shooter. Like it just feels that they were like, well, we don't know how to like balance kind of the ImSim with being a first person shooter. So what we'll do is we'll just remove most of the ImSim stuff, and and we don't want to make it too much of a shooter, so we'll just kind of keep it simple. And it's like, what the fuck? Why? What are you doing? What are you doing?
I think I coined this term on a really early episode of Bullet Time, but I think like Bioshock to me was the start of like, there was this weird short time period of what you had called like the magic shooter, where it was still ostensibly an FPS, but like you would pull the left trigger and your main character would say like, electrify the floor, or they would throw out like a physics or they would turn people into physics. Like that Wolfenstein 09 is that, where it's, you have like 4 special abilities. One of them is you shoot your guns better, and another one is you can heal yourself. And it's like, that's pretty stupid, but
that's
like,
I mean, that's almost as bare bones as you can kind of like take that idea. But I mean, at least they tried. I guess.
and then like a year later they did the game Singularity, which was you can shoot on the right trigger, but then your left trigger is like a time gauntlet, and you can make stuff older or younger to solve puzzles. Again, it's this era where it's like, it still has to be an FPS game, but like we want to do more with it. So we'll just put like a special ability on the left trigger, and that'll let you like, I don't know, activate a switch or what. It's very, it's trying to like squeeze genres down the barrel of a gun, I guess, like trying to turn everything into an FPS. And Bioshock is obviously the first game that does it, and does it massively successfully, and everybody just kind of looks at it and goes, shit, can we try and do the same thing to incredibly varying levels of success? To which we've talked about all the Arcane stuff, which I would say is like the best of it, and then the only other game that I feel like kind of pulls it off okay is Bioshock 2, but that is purely because it's building on the foundations of Bioshock 1. And I guess I was going to say this right at the beginning of the episode as kind of like a thesis point, but I guess I can say it here of just Bioshock 1 is very much built on, like, I said it was a prestige game, and I think part of that is that it's very, quote, subversive, as in is very much built on subversing tropes that you would be used to in other FPS games, as in
Sure.
all of the bosses are like, human beings that you can kind of chat to. A lot of the you get choices of whether you want to kill people or not. And then obviously right at the end, it subverts the big video game trope of like, oh, actually, all the actions that you were doing weren't actually good. The person who was helping you out wasn't actually a good guy. They were just manipulating you, which obviously is repeating the same plot beat from System Shock 2 years earlier. But because nobody had seen that in the 360 era, they go, wow, what a twist. That's amazing, kind of thing. And so Bioshock 2 comes out, and I think there is just this kind of feeling of, well, shit, Bioshock 1 was this big subversive game, and we have to subvert. Not only do we still have to be subversives, but we have to subvert on Bioshock 1, including down to you play as a Big Daddy, and so you're doing all the Big Daddy stuff. That's a subversion from playing as, like, rather than the Wizard of Oz thing of you're a man from, you go from the real world and go into this fantasy world. You are a character from this fantasy world, essentially, and so you already... I mean, it's a sequel in that, hey, you already know all the rules of Bioshock, and so you could become a character who is from this world, and it makes sense. But then, as it goes along, you discover that actually you were never you were a normal person from the surface before that had happened, and you're slowly kind of piecing your story back together. It subverts the fact that Andrew Ryan was the head of... I was about to call him the head, but that's not the lead. He was the mayor or the leader. He was the leader of Rapture. He was the guy who founded it. And his entire thing was that he was a libertarian, fuck you, got mine, like, objectivist of just every man for himself, fuck the government. And then obviously in 2, it's like big innovation is like, oh, what's the opposite of being a libertarian? Collectivism? And so the big boss of Bioshock 2 is a psychiatrist who's like, we're all in this together, everybody, we're all part of the same team. But then that's evolved into this weird sort of religious fervor where, like, people who were already broken at the end of Bioshock 1, where they were like, I took so many drugs because I'm the best man, I'm the coolest man I know. And then in this one, it's like, I gotta keep taking drugs because I gotta be part of the whole. To the extent of one of the fucking levels in Bioshock 2 is that they've made like a giant brain computer. And the idea is that, like, everyone's going to be put on the same, like, brain. Like, it's like a big hive mind that they're trying to build.
When you say all of that out loud, it's really fucking stupid.
Yeah, no, it is really stupid. And I mean, like, I try and defend the plot. I mean, this is one of those things where it's like, well, if I like Bioshock 2, I should try and defend every part of Bioshock 2, including the plot. No, the story of Bioshock 2 is stupid. I like the characters of Bioshock 2, but I don't like... I mean, the story is... There isn't really...
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I mean, the story itself is dead simple, which is just... You are a Big Daddy, and so 1959 is the year in Bioshock where, like, everything goes wrong, where they've built this city under the ocean, and for 5 years it was perfect, and then in 1959... Civil War breaks out and everybody becomes, like, addicted to mutagenic substances and then, goes crazy. And then when you get there in 1960, it's all gone to pot. And then in 1959, you play as a Big Daddy on New Year's Eve who is separated from their little sister and basically put into, like, you're forced to shoot yourself in the head. And then over a decade, like, years and years, like, after Bioshock 1, like, it's like the late 1960s or something, right?
Yeah.
You wake up again and it's like, oh, this city has gone even worse. But basically you're told, hey, your little sister is back in Rapture. She's grown up, but she's like, well, it's damsel in distress. She's like, come and save me. And again, that's a subversion of, oh, this is actually they're not playing this, like, they're not subverting this, like, say, Braid. No, this is a straight-up damsel in distress story. Go and save your little sister. But
this is such a internet actually whatever kind of, like, thing. But, like, what always bugged me about that is, like, and this is such a stupid thing to, like, ham up on, but, like, your character shoots himself in the head. Yeah. Which, by the way, let me just say, that whole intro sequence, really good. I really like that intro sequence. And then, like, yeah, like a decade later, you wake up, helmet back on for some reason. But, like, wouldn't your character just be a skeleton?
I mean, I assume, I don't know, because he's a big daddy, maybe there's just
I guess. I don't know if they ever explained that. That always just bugged me. I was like, am I just a corpse? Am I playing a corpse? I don't understand.
You wake up next to a Vita chamber, so maybe it's some kind of, like, voodoo of, like, oh, I guess they brought you back from the dead, like, years later. They never quite explain it, but... Like,
okay, as long as they didn't explain it, so I have an angle to be upset at it from, you know?
No, but it turns out that your little sister, her mother, Sophia Lamb, was she's now become the head of Rapture. Basically, she used to be part of like they had like the founders of Rapture, where you had Andrew Ryan and you had like Xander Cohen and stuff. She was one of them. And basically, because all those guys got killed in the last game by the main character, he's like, I'm in charge now. And,
by default, baby.
By default, I'm the one in charge. And she decides, you know what, Andrew Ryan, he was a big asshole. I'm going to be like, a hippie. I'm going to make everything touchy. Again, it's all very stupid. It's very meat-headed of just like, oh, what's the opposite of being an asshole? Oh, being a hippie. But what if that was bad? Like, again, it's very Bioshock Infinite of just like, oh, it's so clever being a centrist. Actually, both sides are bad. And like, this is kind of like an early glimpse into that of just, what if the communists had like a giant brain computer under the ocean and they were all doing, eating Adam and stuff like that. I was to say this as well. Bioshock has never really had any risk to the outside worlds. Oh, actually, no, that's not true in 2, but like in Bioshock 1, there's never really a threat of like, oh no, what if all the people under the ocean get to the surface and like that becomes the end of the world? Like, what if all the mutants take over? It's just kind of more like, no, you're stuck in a haunted house, so you just got to escape, I guess. Like, is RE7, I suppose. Whereas, at least in this, they do introduce the story of, and again, it's kind of a cool thing, and I guess we can talk a little bit about sort of the marketing behind this, but very quickly. But just the plot of this game, beyond just you finding your little sister, is that in order for Rapture to still continue to function, they've started kidnapping little girls from the surface, like from Atlantic City, like from cities on the Atlantic coast, basically. Yeah.
Oh, I forgot about that part. I remember you said marketing. I remember distinctly before Bioshock 2 came out, there was a website. I don't remember if it was just bioshock2.com or something.
Something below the surface is what.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Oh my God. There was like, it would update like once a week or something, and it would just be stories of girls being kidnapped and just not knowing where they went. Oh my God, I completely forgot about that. That just reminded me. That's crazy. I think that aspect of the story is pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, and like it's a cool thing because like that's not only does it start to build kind of steam on, oh shit, like, what's happening in this game sort of thing, but like the character who's at the center of those stories, who I can't, despite only playing this game, there's something in the sea.com is what it's called, but whatever, same deal. The main character of that story is Mark Meltzer, who's this dad in the 1960s whose daughter, like, he's investigating like all these, he's like a private detective, and like all of these disappearances are happening, like, at the New Jersey coast and like, Coney Island and stuff like that. And then the ARG story ends with his daughter gets kidnapped by a big sister. So he goes on, so he's able to get into Rapture. And you can follow his story then as he is in Rapture. And he's the only guy in all of the Bioshock games who, when you listen to the audio logs, he's the only guy who has a color portrait.
Whoa!
Yeah, that's that guy.
That's cool, actually.
Yeah. No, see, this is why I mean in regards to this game pushes to an 8 or 9 for me, just in regards to the gameplay is pretty generic, but like there's a lot of cool stuff in this.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely tried to like up the stakes in a multitude of ways, and I will never dog on them for that. Because like you said like Bioshock 1 doesn't like kind of like threaten the surface and as like a negative. I don't see that necessarily as a negative. I think it's good for a self-contained story like I thought Bioshock was always going to be.
Oh, yeah.
But like if you're going to make a sequel, having those stakes of like it's affecting people in the surface, I think is one like almost a necessary thing to do, but like the way that they handled it, like what you were just talking about, is really, really neat.
Oh yeah, like
go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna so like as you said, Bioshock 1 is like a perfect thing of if it was just like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, of just she goes there and then she comes back changed, and that works perfectly for a story. If you're making a sequel, you do have to address like, well, genie's out of the lamp kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, I always thought it'd be interesting if they had done a third Bioshock where just at this point, maybe it's the 1970s of this, but like the US government has discovered Rapture, discovered all the shit down there, and has decided, oh, we need to make the surface a lot more like Rapture kind of thing. And so it becomes like an entire, like, basically fantasy has invaded reality in a way.
Can I just say though, real quick, what a wasted opportunity for Bioshock 2 using that storyline of the dad, the private detective whose daughter went missing. What a wasted opportunity it is to not have that dad be an alternate reality version of the main character in Bioshock Infinite. What the fuck?
Oh, yeah.
God. That could have been perfect.
God. And again, I think that kind of reflects as well of, and I'm sure, I mean, I'll ask you this question now, but just like, well, actually, no, I guess you already answered it, because I was going to say if you had to choose between Bioshock 2 or Infinite, which would you choose? You choose 2 over Infinite, because you said it.
Any day of the fucking week.
Yeah, no. But, like, there's so much in 2, which is, like, not just and again, like, obviously it's damning and fate pays, because, like, 2 is a sequel at the end of the day, and everything that it does, which is interesting, is either because it's building on or subverting the first. Like, you couldn't just say, if somebody said, I want to play one Bioshock game, you couldn't say play 2, because then they'd be like, I don't really get it. Because you would need the context of 1 to fully appreciate what it's doing. From the combat being marginally better, from the worlds being even down to, and I mentioned the characters earlier, I really like Sinclair in this, who is like an inversion of Andrew Ryan in regards to, well, he's an inversion of Andrew Ryan, and also he's an inversion of Atlas, in that you're working with the German scientist from the end of the first game, Tenenbaum, who was like, she invented the Little Sisters but now feels guilt and wants to try and like reverse what she's done, to the extent of she's moved back to Rapture because they've started kidnapping girls from the surface and turned them into Little Sisters. She needs your help to undo that, basically. But she says, we need support from, like, one of the last guys in Rapture with any kind of clout, and that's Sinclair. And at first, you only hear him over the radio, and he sounds like the Great Gatsby. He's got one of these voices to him. And you go, oh, well, this is just fucking, they're going to do the thing of, I meet him, and, oh, actually, he was a bad guy all along. One, not only do you see his character model and get to interact with him, so you go, oh, okay,
that's
well,
a guy.
Oh,
like,
so this is a change from Atlas in the first one, where it was literally just a shitty Irish well, it was just Shodan, basically. Like, you go into a room and you find out that actually he was never real. No, this is a real guy, to the extent of Bioshock, but he never betrays you. He's always, like, he's very much on the line of just like, look, at the end of the day, I'm just in it to make $1, but, you know, sometimes I have to get on with it when it is, sort of thing. Like, unlike Andrew Ryan, who was just like, fuck you, got mine, like, he would cut off his own nose to spite his face. Like, Sinclair is smart enough to go, no, actually, you have to help people out in order to... Like, he's caught of the positive version of the bad guy, where she's like, we're all in this together, turn yourself into brain goo. He's just kind of like, no, we're all kind of in this together, but, like, that requires... You know, if you want somebody to help you out, you have to help them out in turn, kind of thing.
Part of me wonders if the negative reception that Bioshock 2 got when it came out, because I remember everybody being super mid on it.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder if that is partly due to the fact that, like, yeah, they subverted the expectations, I guess, from Bioshock 1, but, like, they subverted, and I don't necessarily think this is a bad thing, but like they subverted it in a way that makes a lot of storylines just kind of clear cut instead of having some sort of twist. But I guess really the twist is that that there
There
isn't
is no
any.
twist. Yeah.
And I
Which
wonder
I
if
feel
that's partly like what disappointed a lot of people, because they were like waiting for some kind of like, oh, Sinclair maybe really is a bad guy, or maybe Sinclair isn't real, or all these things. And it's just like, oh no, Sinclair is just telling me the truth. And like,
yeah.
and on paper that's less interesting, but like in context juxtaposed with the first one, yeah, that does make it really neat.
Yeah. No. I think it's one of those things of just I think the first, I mean, and again, we've gone into it, and obviously, like, time has not been kind to the first Bioshock. Like, people are very cold. Like, even though I've warmed up to it again, like, in the years since, and can kind of recognize it as this, even in the context of it came out years after Silent Hill 2 or Metal Gear Solid 2 and all these kind of classic subversive games. It was, like, the first game for a lot of people that kind of, like, opened their third eye that, oh, games can be about something, or they can be a little bit smarter than, the average FPS.
Yeah.
Like,
I'll talk shit on Bioshock all day, every day, but I will never take that away from it, for sure.
But like with two, and like in two's case, I think it's just one of those things of like, it is so indebted to the first, and so like requires subverting elements from the first that it's like, yeah, when it came out, people were just either a bit like, this is kind of the same thing again, or they were just sort of like, yeah, this is less a Bioshock. Where's the whoa moment of Bioshock 1 of like, shit, the crazy taxi arrow was the bad guy all along? 2 never has that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that, it's commendable that they tried. I mean, like, it's so easy to be like, well, they didn't try because they didn't do anything with it. But like, they just told like a clear-cut story. And yeah, like I said earlier, like, and you said earlier, like they subverted your expectations by not doing anything.
And I mean, to give them a little bit more credit, I feel like the writing in 2 is better than 1. Characters are better to, like, you think of, like, I think of like Grace Holloway and like the human characters that you interact with. Everyone in Bioshock 1 is like a disgusting portrayal of somebody with, mental health issues. Like, everyone is screaming like a maniac. Like, the first boss that you fight in that game is a plastic surgeon who forces people to have like, boob jobs and stuff, and it's like, what the fuck is this kind of thing? And then in 2, like, you never really have like, like the craziest character that you fight is like Simon Wells, and like his whole thing has kind of like this religious angle too, which is like, that's interesting. But then there's like straight up characters like the newspaper reporter who's just a fucking worm, who's just kind of like, hey, I need you to go do this for me, kind of thing. And then at the end of it, you get a choice of, are you going to kill him or just leave him alive, kind of thing. And you can just choose to leave him be, because, yeah, the moment that you finally find him, he's just a fucking little worm, and he's like, don't hurt me, kind of thing. Like, you've completely you've unplugged all of his stuff. He's completely demasculated at that point. So, like, I don't know, it treats the world like, and again, of course it's building on a world that already exists, but the way that it fleshes out the world, I think, is just so much more interesting than the sort of the thing that 1 teases, and Infinite never does with its world.
Oh, dear God, no. Dude, Infinite cowers in fear at the aspect of, like, nuance.
Yeah. It's terrified that somebody might, like, go, oh, well, actually, no, this game's based, kind of thing. Like, it's so stupid. But no, 2's like, again, it's one of those good sequels where it's just those things that you didn't know about before. We're going to try and flesh those out as much as we can. So, like, I mean, there's an interview quote where they basically said, we didn't just want to focus on, like, in Bioshock 1, all the bosses that you encounter are very much like, they're the people who like lead those parts of Rapture. Like, Sander Cohen owns Fort Frolic. The fisherman guy owns, like, that part of they're all like leaders of industry, and they're all the bosses. Whereas in this, it's like, you go to the slums and you actually meet the people who built Rapture, and like try to even the people who kind of like during the Civil War who were trying to, because the whole joke with Rapture was that it wasn't built by Andrew Ryan. It was built by like unpaid laborers and stuff like that, who are now all stuck at the bottom of the ocean in this fucking crumbling city while everybody else was able to either escape because they were given they were given death by the guy in the first game, or they were able to get out scot-free basically.
I remember there's sorry, I thought you were I'm sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was gonna say I remember that there's a I forget, there's an audio log in 2, and it's from Fontaine, I think.
Yes.
But this quote always stood out to me because it's evocative of what you were just talking about with like the slums and everything. He was like, Fontaine's like, everyone came down here thinking that they were going to be the leaders of industry, but they all forgot that somebody has to scrub the fucking toilets. They all forgot that. Mm-hmm. And like that's I mean, like, just even that level of kind of nuance just does so much for that game's story and its writing.
In a way that Bioshock 1, because again, I know that people rightly point out with Infinite where it's like, both sides in the regards of, Comstock's bad because, he's a religious extremist and, he's the father of all capital and stuff like that. But also the rebels are bad too because they kill people. Like, Bioshock 1 tries to do the same thing of, well, Andrew Ryan's bad because he's the boss and, like, he doesn't pay anybody anything. But Frank Fontaine's even worse because he's a union head. He was able to get all the rubes to support him when really all he wanted was money. Like, it very much vilifies, like, any kind of sense of union or anything like that in 1. And then 2 feels like it's trying to Again, that's why I said earlier, like, I even try and defend the story of this game in that, the Sophia Lamb stuff is fucking stupid. And obviously she's the main boss, so that's where you get the most of the focus of. But you basically see that in the little people of Bioshock 2, now, like, there are genuinely good people there who are trying to, like, everybody kind of has the theme of, all have to kind of band together to sort of, progress. And that's even kind of reflective in the gameplay of you set up a bunch of tower defense stations to help you out.
It all comes back, baby.
It all comes back. I mean, arguably, even it has team deathmatch multiplayer, as well, although I guess it could very quickly touch on that towards the end.
Oh, don't get me started on that.
Oh no, do you not like the multiplayer?
It's not even that I dislike the multiplayer. I think it's like a microcosm of a giant problem that plagued that generation of video games.
We can dig into all of that because I think that's the more interesting thing about it. But
I don't know if I talked about this when I was on the Scorn episode, but like there are a lot of good games that came out in that generation. I'm not going to deny this. I'm never going to say that it was all bad. But dear God in heaven, I almost stopped playing video games in the 360 era because I was so sick of all of these games and franchises trying to be Call of Duty in any way that they could. And it was so annoying seeing like multiplayer tacked on to Bioshock, seeing it tacked on to like The Last of Us, seeing it tacked on to all of these things where it was just like, why are you doing this?
We can, if you want, then we can dip into the multiplayer. I was going to say, is there anything about like the sort of single player? Because I think I don't think that the chicken has much meat left on it, but we've sort of picked at it in different. We've kind of come at it from a couple of different angles. It hasn't been like, okay, here's the plot, here's what this. And I think explaining the plot isn't that interesting. It's one of those things that I think that if people had interest in what we've said so far, I would go and play it to kind of find out more, because it is still a Bioshock game, and so there is interesting things that happen with the plot. And as that, like, there's a section where you become a little sister for a little while, and it's like, that's cool.
That is the coolest part of the whole game. I don't know if that's like weird to say, because like you don't really do anything, but like just and like we were saying earlier, that little section gives the world so much more meat on its bones, because like it puts into context so much of stuff you've seen for the past 2 games. And like that new angle, it's like they see the world in like this like pristine vision. It's not a lot, but it does so much more than like it actually is. You know what I mean?
You know what I'll say then? But I think with the single player, Bioshock 1 is definitely like, Bioshock 2. If Bioshock 1 is like a game which is at a consistent level the way through. Bioshock 2 is a lot ropier, but it's like its lows are lower, but its highs are way higher.
Oh,
and it has a lot of,
higher.
Yeah. It is a game full of like a lot of small, really interesting ideas, but it never quite clicks the same way that kind of the first game does. I still think 2 is a way better game than the first one, especially more than Infinite. But yeah, like compared to like the best FPSs of that era, not, it doesn't quite clear. I can understand. Here's the funny thing though, is that reviewers at the time were very keen on it. Not quite to the extent of, because Bioshock 1 got like 9s and 10s out the gate. This is a little bit lower than that, but it's still pretty high, and everybody's still pretty keen on it. But it's as you said, in the kind of the gamer space, nobody really gave it the time of day. I think it's partially two things. It's as you said, is that it is so indebted to the first one, while also its big subversion is not being subversive, which isn't as interesting. I also think it's the thing that we were talking about earlier with Ken Levine, which is just that it was very apparent up front. People knew that Ken Levine didn't work on, Bioshock 2 was like a lesser product because it was made by a different team that wasn't original. Oh god,
it's the Dark Souls 2 problem all over again. No!
It is. It's the B team. It's the From Software B squad. Yeah. It's DST, baby. It was funny because my example of that is Arkham Origins, which it wasn't made by Rocksteady, it was made by Warner Bros. Montreal. That game is actually good though, and I'll say this, is because it's made by fucking it was all ex Ubisoft people who knew how to make open world games. This is Rocksteady, who, even as far as fucking Suicide Squad, still don't know how to make an open world game.
Oh no.
Yeah. Oh, but yeah, it's just such a I like this game more than 1, and I mean, of the games that we cover for Bullet Time as well, this is nowhere near this isn't a shit game. This is leagues ahead of most stuff we cover. But I mean, it was funny because you were the person who did pitch doing Bioshock 2 for the pod, and I think I get an idea of why you would say it is. But I guess just in your sort of mind, why did you think it was kind of a good pick for Bullet Time, I suppose?
I think it's, I personally think that I might be just misremembering, but I distinctly remember so many people being dismissive about Bioshock 2.
Oh yeah.
And I remember when I beat it, I was yeah, the main story is probably not as good, but the gameplay I always stood out to me as being really fun and engaging. And then like I said earlier, I would play Bioshock 1 more than I ever did 2. But then when I went back and played 2, I was like, wait, hold on. Why is this way more fun than the first one? Yeah. And I distinctly wanted to just talk about it because I'm under the impression that people kind of forget that Bioshock 2 is even worth playing. And
so do you know what I think?
It is. It's worth playing.
Yeah. Do you know what I think it is? Because you know how we were being saying how about how Bioshock 1 is now so controversial. Well, I say controversial, but people dog on that game so hard because it was why did journos think this game was good? It fucking sucks. And then Bioshock Infinite is still it's a decade out now, but that thing is still nuclear in regards to no one, absolutely zero. There are no shooters for fucking Bioshock Infinite. But those two games are so incredibly notorious. This is 2, which is just, not only is it not notorious, just people aren't talking about it. If it had notoriety, maybe people would be talking about it, but because it's fine, Bioshock 2 is just completely forgotten.
It's a damn shame because I think for all of the people that do hold Bioshock 1 in such a high regard,
yeah,
I don't know when the last time they played Bioshock 2. Hey, people listening, if you like Bioshock 1, it's been a long time since you played Bioshock 2, play Bioshock 2. It's so much more fun than the first one. You'll be like, oh damn, why the fuck haven't I been playing this? It's really good in comparison. As someone that would maximally give this game a 6, you should play Bioshock 2.
And I will say this much of just and I said it earlier, which is that Bioshock 2 feels like a game for fans of Bioshock 1, which is, you need to have some familiarity with Bioshock 1 to fully appreciate what 2 is doing, I think. Versus...
I would even argue that, if I would argue that you could just play Bioshock 2. You wouldn't get quite as much out of it, I think, but like I think generally speaking, in a game like this, I'm much more mechanically focused. Like, how does it feel? All this stuff. And I think in that regard, it's so much more interesting than Bioshock 1.
Oh yeah.
And its story, sure, like in the main story and like all the little stuff that kind of happens off to the side, those are amplified if you know Bioshock 1's story and like where all that comes from. But like if you just went into Bioshock 2 blind, I still think you would get something out of Bioshock 2's story.
Yeah.
So
I totally agree.
So
with
play
that.
Bioshock 2 even if you haven't played any of them.
I will say though, if you decide to play this game, you can get the quote Bioshock collection, which came out in 2016. If you get that version though, you will no longer be able to play the multiplayer side of this game, Bioshock : Battle for Rapture. So that got patched out of Bioshock 2 : The Fall of Rapture. Yeah, you could not play the multiplayer mode in the re-release of Bioshock 2.
Why did they patch it? They just don't pay for the servers anymore?
Yeah, the server's down.
Oh, damn.
Which is a big fucking shame because the mod. So we'll go. So yeah, let's talk about this a little bit. Of just like, yeah, I mean, it is funny that you say like you nearly fell out of games at this time because yeah, I think I had the same thing of just like I did get very kind of disillusioned with just everybody wanted to be Call of Duty, even down to single player games that were trying to, we want people to play these single player games forever. And the big thing was, and people, there's people listen to the podcast who might only be 10 years old and so have no idea about this. One of the big things that game publishers hated in the late 2000s, early 2010s was game resales. They didn't like the idea of people buying secondhand copies of games. And so they did a lot of things like they put in codes that were like, hey, if you want this DLC or like this expansion, you have to buy a new copy of the game. Like Batman Arkham City does that. You can only play the Catwoman stuff if you have like a fresh copy of the game. But then another thing that they did to try and incentivize people holding onto the games was that they had shoehorned in multiplayer modes.
Yeah.
So,
and I'll go out on a limb because I was never really, and still am not, a multiplayer, like a competitive multiplayer kind of person.
Sure.
But I did play a decent little bit of Bioshock 2's multiplayer.
Yeah.
And even though I kind of hated everything it stood for, I did kind of think it was good.
Yeah, of this era, I would say, well, here's the thing. I kind of liked all these weird experimental multiplayers that they did, because usually they were still trying to do the thing of, because even though this was kind of the era where everything was an FPS, so it was still sort of like, you can just plug that in as Call of Duty or Halo. A lot of these games were still kind of like third-person adventure games, or whatever, with weirdo mechanics. And so they were like, shit, how do we turn that into a multiplayer game? For example, did you ever play the multiplayer for Dead Space 2?
Did I? I don't think I did.
It was team deathmatch where one team was engineers and the other team was necromorphs.
Oh my goodness. I love asymmetry in video games. I am annoyed that I never played that. Oh, come on.
So like all of these multiplayer, apart from the Bioshock 2 one, but like nearly all of these multiplayer spin-off modes were playing with asymmetry, because it was like, because they were third-person, shooters and adventure games, it was like, all the, the main characters like human, but then like all the enemies could be like zombies or aliens and stuff. And like, yeah, when you play that game, when you play Dead Space 2 multiplayer as the engineers as a third-person shooter, all the necromorph stuff was in first person, and you could play as like the different...
What?
The guy who shoots the 3 spikes out of his tail, or the fucking babies from 2. You could like choose whatever necromorph. Yeah, it was fucking sick.
What? Oh, oh my god! I'm angry now.
Yeah, and again, you can't play these games anymore because they were all tied to servers, which is just long gone. My favorite multiplayer mode of this era was, I mentioned it earlier, but Batman Arkham Origins, the one which was made by Warner Bros. Montreal, had a multiplayer mode which was made by Splash Damage, the guys who did Brink and Wolfenstein Enemy Territories.
Oh.
That multiplayer mode was team deathmatch, where it was 3 versus 3 versus 2, where
What?
one of the teams of 3 were Bane's thugs that played like a third-person shooter. The other team of 3 were Joker's thugs that played like a third-person shooter. And then the team of 2 were Batman and Robin. And that played like an Arkham game.
What?
Yeah. And so the goal was team deathmatch with a little bit of like capture territory in it, where it's like, oh, you're playing in Axis Chemicals, or you're playing in like the Fun Fair or whatever. And so it's like you're trying to blow away the other team and trying to like gain ground. Where meanwhile, the guys playing as Batman and Robin, it doesn't matter what team they are, you just try and take these guys out as silently as possible. Like you're doing Batman shit.
That
It's
is
so
incredible.
Cool. Yeah, it's so fucking sick.
That's just a board game. I am fucking furious now. Why I want to play that?
And I mean, I genuinely, my eyes water when I think about it. Like I think about this with two things. One, which is that in the fucking 90s, when Capcom made arcade belt-scrolling fighting games about fucking anything, like they did one based on D&D, they did one based on like an independent comic that only sold like 5 copies called Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. They would just make they would make like the world's greatest belt-scrolling fighting games about nothing, like absolutely fucking anything. And now it's like, oh yeah, games are too fucking expensive. We can't even make like Dino Crisis anymore. We can't even make we can only make a Resident Evil game like once every 4 years. It's like fucking hell. Like, and I think and I think about this with this era of when EA would be like, yeah, we need to have like the most robust multiplayer mode added to these single player games. Come up with the coolest idea that you have, which could be like something that will keep people about. And again, the idea was to one, curb secondhand sales, and 2, like, oh, we want to compete with Halo and Call of Duty. That was never going to happen in a million years because Halo has the most locked in player base in the universe, and Call of Duty had the prestige system. So like you know, Dead Space never had a chance really as a result. But
zero chance, less than zero actually.
And so like, not only were these modes just completely not only did people not play these modes, people didn't even know that like half these modes existed, and it's
the ones you told me about, I literally had no idea existed.
They're so fucking good. Like even
the only one that's even comparable is like Doom Eternal or 2016.
Doom 2016, yeah.
Yeah, because it was like the asymmetric.
Oh yeah. Like you played as imps and stuff, but then you could also like power up into revenants and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, and you were fighting against like the Doom guy.
Yeah.
Was that 2016 or is that Eternal? I want to say
no, that
Eternal.
must have been Eternal. The thing I remember about Doom 2016 had the weirdest thing of Bethesda were very standoffish with like games journalists and games like websites, and so Doom 2016 didn't get any previews apart from the multiplayer, and people were like, oh, is this game going to be bad? And then it comes out and the single player is like really good, and people are just like,
really good.
why didn't you release this? This is like, what the fuck kind of thing. You know what,
Todd Howard, I shakes my fist at you.
Before we talk quickly about the Bioshock 2 one, another multiplayer mode that I really liked from this era was, did you ever play the Assassin's Creed one?
No, I've actually only played Assassin's Creed 1. It's the only one I've ever played.
Funnily enough, I've only ever played 2 and Brotherhood, and Brotherhood was the game that introduced this, which is, it had a multiplayer mode, which was like, it played like Assassin's Creed, where basically, like, it was 6 players. All of them were assassins, but like they had the same models as NPCs, basically. So it was all about like trying to hide in crowds and like integrate try and pretend that you're like an NPC, and then try and figure out who the other players are based on how they move about, and then try and get in and assassinate them without anybody else noticing. It was so
just
cool.
Werewolf. That's just the game Werewolf. That's what the fuck.
Yeah, it's playable werewolf. It's that mechanic, but stapled to a third-person action game.
Oh, I take back my uniform hatred for this concept. These are all killer ideas that you've just told me.
Yeah. And Bioshock 2 is probably the one which is the most standard of them because it's team-based arena deathmatch. Because it's
literally the only hook that the Bioshock 2 multiplayer has is the theme. It's like, oh, you get to play what happened before Bioshock 1. You get to play the reason that everything died. That's a cool hook. Yeah, that's a cool hook. And that's it. Yeah. That's all it's got.
It's got like, I really like the hub. I really like they give you like a little apartment where you can customize your character, customize your loadout, like look at the scoreboards and stuff. And then to get to the different matches, you have like a bathysphere that you can just drive to the different matches. And it's like, that's cool. That's like
I don't remember that at all. That's cool. That is pretty neat. Okay, I'll give it that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a glorified menu, but I like little hubs. I like little like kind of worlds that you can walk around.
Yeah, that's like Banjo-Kazooie, but just Bioshock.
Oh yeah, no, it is very Banjo-Kazooie. And the thing as well is that, oh yeah, and so because it's set in the Civil War, it's basically the two sides are Sinclair Solutions, which Sinclair is the guy who's introduced in 2, and Fontaine Futuristics, who's like he's the bad guy of the first one, and so it's like, depending what squad you're on, you get like different. Again, they make it so like, oh, one of the guys made these plasmids and the guy made the other ones, and like it's kind of class based, where it's like, you know, bruisers are only going to have these tonics, and these other classes will have these ones. Like they do try and like specify what kind of splicer you want to be, which is cute.
Sure.
It's made, so the multiplayer mode is made by a studio called Digital Extremes, who are like, I mean, we're covering them on an upcoming episode when we talk about The Darkness 2, because that's the game that they made. I quite like him they were like one of the first person shooter developers, and to the extent of the original Unreal game that the Unreal Engine came out of, and then the first Unreal Tournament, they made that.
Oh, whoa.
That wasn't made by Epic. That was done by Digital Extremes. And then they did a bunch of, like, they did The Darkness 2, they did Dark Sector. They're still around, but they only make one game now, which is Warframe.
Oh.
Yeah, that's them. They're the Warframe guys.
What? Oh my god, the places you will go if you're a game developer from the 90s.
It's the classic Destiny Bungie thing of just like, they were a work for hire developer who, like, you know, you would hire them out to kind of make your game or to do your multiplayer mode, but all the way along they were trying to get their own IP off the ground, and that was what, like, they had Warframe as a concept had been something that they had been developing in the background for like decades, to the extent of Dark Sector, this 360 third person shooter, was meant to be the first Warframe game, but like because of like because of the publisher, they were like, oh no, you need to change this, and he needs to have like a human protagonist, blah, blah, blah. And so like, it's very different to Warframe, but it's like, that's a first taste of that world. And people are like, this is interesting, we want more of this. And then they're basically able, for all the projects that they're doing, to build enough cash up to then do Warframe and do it all in-house. And because they, like, I think that comes out maybe the year before, the same year as Destiny, they're the only guys who were ever successful doing a live service game, because they were the first to do it. And so Warframe is now just going to be around forever, but that's the only game they can make as a result.
Damn.
Yeah, I know.
Wait, that means Warframe has been around since what, 2013, 2014?
Yeah. Yeah, it's nearly a decade old.
Holy shit.
Yeah. It was like a really early PS4 game. Like, that's fucking... Yeah,
I need to get around to playing. I think I had Warframe at some point. I think I put maybe like 15 hours in it, and then I just have never touched it again. I should give that game another go at some point.
Yeah, it's not really I mean, I'm not really into like MMO stuff, so it's like I'll probably never get around to it.
26.4 hours.
Oh boy. Yeah. And it's funny to think that like Warframe is like one of those games that it becomes like the everyday game, for like the same way that like Destiny or GTA 5 is like, you'll talk to a guy in work who doesn't play video games, but he'll say like, oh no, I play like GTA 5 every day, like for 4 hours a day. And it's like, cool. And Warframe's exactly the same. You know?
I remember I had a coworker at one job that when they were training me, they were like, "Oh, what do you do?" And I was like, "Well, what do you like to do?" And I was like, "Oh, I like to play video games." And they were like, "Oh, dude, so same here. I play Destiny like every day. Me and my friends like play it, and we do like skirmishes or whatever it's called." And I was like, "Oh, I've only kind of heard mixed things about it. What do you? I mean, you really like it?" And he was like, "It's kind of miserable, but I can't stop playing
but I
it.
can't give it up." Exactly. Your hook's in. Like you can't get out of it at that point.
I was like, "Damn, dude, you should play a different game then."
But yeah, no, the multiplayer mode is interesting, and again, just as a reflection of like Warframe, where Warframe is a game that people will play every single day versus Bioshock 2, The Fall of Rapture, where they designed it to be a game that, people will have to keep this game, so they'll play it every day, which I don't think the multiplayer ever amounted. Like, I think it has its shooters, but I think, like, no one quite, it didn't become a Call of Duty, basically.
I think it's so funny thinking that the executives at 2K were like, people will never get rid of Bioshock 2 because they have the Fall of Rapture. Like,
and
that's such a funny
just,
thing
like,
to think about.
When you think of Bioshock, like, again, the shooting's very low down on the list of stuff that's good about that game. And again, I will argue that the shooting's better in this. I'll also say that that's probably down to the fact that Digital Extremes worked with 2K Marin on the shooting of Bioshock 2 and the multiplayer side of it, so it felt pretty good.
It
But
feels so much better than the first one. It's almost like it almost makes the first one less fun. Like you play Bioshock 1, you're like, all right, like I get what they're doing with the mechanics. Like I understand what's happening. You play Bioshock 2, you're like, wow, this is snappy and enjoyable, and I'm still getting what they want out of it. And then you play Bioshock 1 again, and you're like, this sucks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's just very night and day. And again, like the multiplayer kind of lets that stuff shine a lot more. But then again, if you're playing, and I think a lot of people had this, I remember at the time, a lot of people had this argument of just like, well, I'm looking forward to Infinite because they've said they're not doing a multiplayer because they know that, they'd have to take resources out of the single player, which is what I want to play Bioshock for. And it's like, I mean, that game still ended up being a fucking turd. So it's like, versus Bioshock 2, which is good, and also managed to have a multiplayer, which was also good. So
and has stayed good the whole time.
Yeah, no, exactly it. I mean, it's like I was saying to you earlier about the whole kind of Skyrail system and stuff. Is that like Infinite is the only game that I would argue should have tried to have done a multiplayer mode just for like. Again, when I was talking about all those cool multiplayer modes that those single player games had. Like, I can see a version of Bioshock Bioshock Infinite where it's like it's team deathmatch and you have the rails and like you can hop between the different
God, you're so
levels.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that would have actually been. That would have made for some good maps for multiplayer. Yes. Dear God, what the fuck were they thinking?
I literally think of there's this one map in Infinite, and I can't remember what part it is, but it's like. It's the one where it's like the old like fashion 1890s sort of Victorian pier sort of arcade where there's like a bunch of shops on the bottom floor. And then at the top is all the apartment tops and stuff like that. And it's like just going between those different levels would be fucking sick.
Oh my God. This whole conversation has made me like Infinite even less. From start to finish.
Yeah, exactly. Like Infinite is a waste of potential. Like it's so fucking ironic that game is called Bioshock Infinite, and yet it just squanders any potential it has. This is too, whereas it is so like subservient, like it only exists because of the first Bioshock, but they use that opportunity to do so many different things, including, and I think we would be remiss not to mention it, but a year after Bioshock 2, its DLC Minerva's Den came out, which is like, as people have been when Bioshock 2 initially came out, a lot of people were very cold on why did they do this, like it's not Cam Levine or whatever. Minerva's Den is like universally beloved by like game journalists and like game players alike,
It's fine.
I also think it's fine. I think people, what I think it is? I think it's people pretend that Bioshock 2 is a lot worse than it actually is. So when they play Minerva's Den, they go, wow, a game that's a 7 out of 10. This is actually an 11 out of 10 in comparison. And it's like, no, it's, again, we were saying earlier about, Bioshock 2 never has like, the crazy taxi arrow was the bad guy all along twist. Right. That's because they were saving that for Minerva's Den.
Oh, good. The twist I have already experienced. Again!
Again. Wow. I mean, it's kind of a cool twist. And so I guess just for people listening, so Minerva's Den DLC it's not related to the plot of Bioshock 2. Like, it's a separate story that takes place around the same time as Bioshock 2, where you play as a different Big Daddy. You're not the Subject Delta. That I remember his name because I remember Tenenbaum saying it in a German accent. So you play Delta. As like Subject Alpha or something like that, but you're asked to go and find the Thinker, who's like he's a early old-fashioned computer that they build in Rapture that they were like, we can use this to get at Sophia Lamb and get all the little girls home. And as you move towards it, you get blown up and then you get sucked out. Oh yeah, we forgot to mention that. But it literally only happens twice, which is that finally in Bioshock, they let you go outside into the ocean, and it's beautiful. It's cute. It's like, you enjoy, all the anxiety and horror of shooting people inside, and then you go out into the ocean and it's like SpongeBob. It's just like, it's peaceful out here.
Again, continuing with my my negative theme of the Bioshock games, of they have a really neat idea and do nothing with it every time.
Yeah, they never do anything with those. Which do you know? Oh, actually, no, you don't. I thought that you fought a Big Daddy outside at one point, but I don't. No, I don't think that actually happens.
Doesn't happen. You don't do anything with those sections. They look pretty, and it's like a nice break in pacing, I guess. But like, how are you gonna play a game where it's literally in the middle of the ocean, and then you get to go out into said ocean, and you don't get to even shoot a fish? What the fuck?
Yeah, do they not give you a harpoon gun so you can do just that?
They give you a harpoon gun, but you don't do anything with it in the ocean sections. You just wander around.
That sucks.
What are you doing?
What were they smoking at the offices? That's what I want to know. Why didn't they let you do that? Hey.
Thank you.
There you go. That's the end of the episode. Thanks for coming. Yeah, I mean, you collect a bunch of worms to get Adam, but that's kind of... Yeah, it's a cool idea. It's a cool set piece the first time it happens, but then they, again, as you said, they never really do anything with it. But like,
it's so like frustrating is too strong of a word. It's just so actively disappointing that all of these neat ideas, and they're like, "Hey, wasn't that cool?" And you're like, "Yeah, what are you gonna do with it?" And they're like, "Do with it? What do you mean?"
Yeah, what do you mean? We don't do anything. That's not how that works. But Minerva's Den's cool. I mean, it's only 2 hours long, so it's like it tells a cute little story and then gets out immediately. And funnily enough, the lead designer of it, Steve Gaynor, was he started at Irrational, and like apparently when they interviewed him as a game designer, one of the tasks that they gave him was come up with a level for Bioshock, like something that, because again, like the way the Bioshock 1 and 2 are both designed is that like it's all... I'm not quite sure how to describe it, but it's very much like, even though it's meant to be a big interconnected world, each level that you go to is basically its own like mini sandbox that has a definitive beginning, middle, and end. Like stories don't really carry on between them. It's more just kind of like, oh, this is the fisherman's zone, or this is the artist zone and stuff like that. And like this kind of has a bit like so that was kind of how they designed Bioshock, and they basically said to Steve Gaynor, what's a level idea that you would come up with, and like, that we could literally just plop in as like something you do during the game. And his pitch was essentially the idea for Minerva's Den, which was, what if you go and you find like the giant computer system, and all the way along you're being helped out by like a guy that you never sees, like a kindly voice on the radio who points him in the right direction. And then it turns out that at the end, that actually it was the computer that was helping you out all along. He was not Evil Showdown from System Shock 2.
Yeah, and you know what's so funny that like I'm making assumptions here, but with all the people that played Bioshock 2 and they're like, man, the story didn't do anything. I'm disappointed. Well, sure, okay, here you go with Iridius and Minerva's Den, and guess what? They did the thing you wanted them to, and it's really mid. I'm sorry.
No, that's why I would describe it. I think people kind of gas it up a lot because it was like, wow, I didn't know what to expect because I had no expectations of Bioshock 2. And it's like, well, that's a you kind of problem. It's cute. It's fine, though. Like, that's the way I would describe it.
It's fine.
It's System Shock 2 if it was nice and only, like, 2 hours long. You learn the story.
Too much praise.
Okay. I mean, but you learn the story about, he's a guy called Porter, and like you can tell like he's this like kind of African American genius who on the surface obviously wasn't getting any kind of respect for his work because, it was before civil rights and stuff. So he came under the water thinking that would equalize stuff, but then he discovered that because like he's paired up with a guy who's like this jealous programmer who like they build a computer together and like the jealous programmer was like, we can use this to predict human nature and we're able to control people as a result. Whereas Porter was like, no, my wife died and I want to build a computer that's sophisticated enough that it could emulate my wife, basically. And so that then becomes the thing with him is that like he was basically able to pull off what he wanted, which was build a computer that could emulate a human being, but it ended up he'd had to do it to himself. Because it turned out that the big daddy that you were playing as all along was Porter, who had his memory. He basically had been, again, like sort of reflecting real life stuff. He had been done in by the jealous programmer and got turned into a big daddy as a punishment. So,
and that twist, I think, is pretty okay. I'm fine with that story.
That's good.
Yeah, no, that's good. Props to that part. I did not see that coming. I probably should have. But I didn't see it coming, and I was pleasantly subverted. My expectations were pleasantly subverted with that one.
And Steve Gaynor enjoyed working on that so much, as did other members of the team at 2K Marin, that they all left to form a new company called the Fulbright Company, and in 2013 made Gone Home. So.
Oh no.
Oh, you're not a fan of Gone Home?
I hate that game.
Oh no.
And it's not even the themes or anything. I just think I won't get in. I hate that game though.
Okay, that's fair. I am okay with you know what? My review of Gone Home is that I recognize that it's a very good game. Not really my thing, but whatever. The people who enjoyed it, I'm glad they did, is my review of it. But yeah, running around that big ass house, I was like, God, if I could only be like shooting zombies at the same time, this would be so much more fun.
What have they done since then?
They did Tacoma as well, which was basically was a similar idea of like it was Gone Home, but like in a space station, funnily enough. So it was like finding out what had happened to this crew that had disappeared and stuff like that. I think that was kind of it, though. I don't know what other...
interesting.
Yeah, they didn't do a ton of games they did Gone Home, they did Tacoma. Oh. Okay.
Uh-oh.
They ended up splitting up because apparently Steve Gaynor wasn't a very good project manager. He was a bit of a toxic individual. So,
oh no!
Yeah. Whoops!
Why does it always happen? Every time.
Every goddamn time. They started working on a game called Open Roads, which I think... Oh, it did come out. It came out this year. Oh boy, that was in the oven for a while.
Oh wow,
boy.
Holy shit.
Mixed to average reviews. Oh
no.
Shit. Okay. Fair dues. But yeah, that's a place to end, I suppose.
I do have one question.
Sure.
Are you excited for a potential Bioshock 4? Because apparently it's happening.
It's been happening for a while. I mean, so literally 2K put together a studio to work on, quote, new Bioshock games. And that was a good 5 or 6 years ago at this point. I mean, remember when Ken Levine came out at the Sony press, like at the Sony E3 and said, I am committing to putting a Bioshock game on the PS Vita?
Oh my god, yes, I remember that.
Yeah, that never went anywhere, did it?
Jesus. Ken Levine is basically not Todd Howard. What's the one guy? The Fable guy. Peter Molyneux.
Peter Molyneux. Yeah, no, he comes out and says, yo, you'll be able to pet every dog in this game. Hey, Peter Molyneux was the original Pet the Dog guy. People don't really think about that.
What a pioneer. He actually did something.
He really did. He pioneered petting dogs. But
I want to say that despite all of the negativity I throw at Bioshock,
sure.
I am genuinely very curious about what a Bioshock 4 would be. Because one, Ken Levine's not making it. Two, it's a studio with the entire industry have happened in between these releases. There's so much more that they could build off of. And the thought that the next Bioshock game is, if they do return to Rapture, is actually just a gigantic interconnected city. Oh my god, fuck me up. I would buy that in a heartbeat.
So I think what you've said is absolutely right there, because like what I've been saying across all these sort of 2K episodes is that like a lot of the, like Bioshock comes out in 2007, as is The Darkness. This comes out in 2010, and then The Bureau comes out in 2013, and that feels like the entire life and death of the FPS prestige shooter, where it's like FPS games are the most important games on the market. And that's no longer the case. Now it's like third-person shooters that do that. Like when you think about it, like the most important games that are out there are like what? GTA, like The Last of Us Part 2 and GTA 5 and stuff like that.
I'm trying to think.
When I say important, I mean like kind of prestige sort of.
I know exactly what you mean. I'm just trying to think because I mean, but you might be right. At least just trying to think of something off the top of my head. Last of Us 2 is definitely exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think The Last of Us 2 is like the perfect example of that. Of just like that is what people can. Oh, and all the Sony stuff. So like the new God of War games are that, and like the Spider-Man games are kind of that, while also being comic booky as well. Like
Sony is keeping up the Bioshock prestige.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. But the Bioshock prestige evolved from, because again, Bioshock Infinite comes out the same year as The Last of Us Part 1, and where Infinite failed, like The Last of Us picked up the baton and said, no, actually, you can make smart games about things, I guess. Even though the fucking The Last of Us Part 1 is just Children of Men. Like, well, Children of Men meets, like, The Road. Like, it's just remixing a bunch of, like, prestige zombie media. And then people go, wow, round of applause. Make this a HBO television program. And then that becomes the template for, like, a bunch of Sony stuff from there, you know?
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, I can't blame Sony because the amount of people, amount of times that I heard The Last of Us is the Citizen Kane of video games. You know, that's kind of hard to just be like, well, we can't not do that again. You know what I mean?
True. Yeah.
I do really like The Last of Us' story.
Oh, sure.
I don't like that gameplay that much, but it's fine.
No, I think, see, that's the thing with prestige games as well, is that they don't have the best gameplay either. And like Bioshock's like a perfect example of that. But to go back to what you were saying about Bioshock 4, which is just like, yeah, because FPS games no longer have to be like the big smart games, they could like fully embrace like Bioshock is still genre at the end of the day. It's horror, it's sci-fi. They can just like lean like, because Bioshock 2 kind of gets into those places now and again, but they could just fully lean into genre and like if they made it like a full-on body horror FPS game, I'd be like, yeah, fuck. And if they did the whole, if it was a complete, if it was like, did you ever play Arcane's Prey?
I haven't beaten it, but I put a good chunk of time into it. Yeah.
But if it was like, if Rapture was as connected as that, like as fucking Talos 1, fuck me up.
Oh,
like
my
that is
God.
such a
that would yes. Oh, if Bioshock 4 is basically Prey 2, the amount of people that would bust a fat nut over that would be astronomical.
I would. I be like that picture of Randy Marsh where he's
it was a spooky ghost.
Oh, it was a ghost.
It was Prey 2.
It was, oh, Prey 2 did this to me. Yeah, no, like, yeah, if they could make the, and again, like, I wonder with that as well is that, like, would they set it in the, like, again, would they do the idea of, like, continuing on from Bioshock 2 where it's the US government discovers Rapture and then starts to, like, they redevelop it into, like, a big-ass science base, so you have a mix between, so, like, Prey, so, like, you have a mix between all the 60s deco stuff, but then also a bunch of, like, modern to the 70s
that would
stuff
be
in it.
so cool.
Yeah, see, like, Bioshock's got legs to it, and again, like, you could even...
Yeah.
They
Look, they just need to make it an immersive sim, like a real one. They can't like fiddle around and be like, oh, look, we have elements of sim. No, make it an immersive sim and then work from there. And you got gold, kid. You got it.
Let you be able to, like, because obviously you can, like, shock stuff with electricity, but, like, imagine if you could, like, divert power from, like, rooms of Rapture, but also, like, you could just fill rooms up with, like, you could just completely destroy parts of Rapture by filling rooms with water. Like,
my God, there's actually so much potential. And you know what actually is not, it's been a second since I played the first one, but
Sure.
You know what element is really missing at the very least from Bioshock 1 and 2 that could be, like, implemented as, like, a core thing that Prey did is just, like, an artificial progression system of, like, you can level up your character and have builds. Make Bioshock 4 have builds, please. God damn it.
Like, fully, like, become an RPG again, and
Yes.
be able to build a class and a build.
Because System Shock 2 has like
that's
really simple like builds and stuff. It's got like 3 or 4 categories, but like you can even just do that or make it really intricate. Make it like 16 different things, like aiming, reload speed, and like oh my God, you could do such a good Bioshock game. You could do it.
To go back to the Prey thing as well, which is just that, like, you talk about System Shock 2 and the fact that, like, yeah, you could be a soldier and shoot everything, but then you could also be a hacker, or you could, like, bring back Prey's thing of, like, being able to prefabricate, like, robot, like, let you be able to play it non-lethally if you wanted to. Or maybe, like, you know how Prey has it where, you know, you can splice yourself out with alien stuff so much that, like, turrets turn on you? Maybe it's just let you be able to, if you want to play as somebody who, you could, like, not splice yourself at all, and that, like, opens up some pathways. Or you could become like,
a splicer.
yeah, you could just turn into, like, bring back all the concepts art of people who, like, got so spliced up they became, like, big slugs and stuff. Yeah, let you do that.
Oh my God, I went from being curious to actively wanting a Bioshock 4 now.
we're like monkeys in the zoo, like just hopping up and down and hollering at the idea of.
That's the thing that was like, I think I'm so hard on Bioshock because I see such potential.
The potential is sick.
Never really fully like realized.
Yeah. No, like Bioshock 2, like, to go back to the Fallout 3 thing that I said all the way at the beginning, Bethesda was able to completely tap into what is cool. Well, Bethesda, when they took it off into play, who had already tapped into what was cool about that setting, then were able to continue tapping into what was cool about that setting. And then New Vegas comes out and continues showing what you can do with the cool setting of Fallout. You could do that with Bioshock. There's like so many angles to that you could just squeeze, you know?
Like in New Vegas, I still haven't beaten New Vegas. I put like 30 hours in New Vegas. I feel like I got a decent grip on what New Vegas is. And New Vegas, when you compare it to Fallout 3, this is now officially a Fallout episode. Fallout 3 is just like it nails. I mentioned Fallout 3 in my upcoming video that I'm working on. But like Fallout 3 is less of a Fallout game in terms of like writing. It's not super focused on like moral decisions. It's super binary, and like the main quest is really lame, and there's all of these factions that don't get fleshed out whatsoever, that 1 and 2 actively do their best to like flesh out and make like people out of, right?
Yeah.
But what Fallout 3 does so well, and in my opinion is comparable to Bioshock in this sense, it's like the world building and like the world itself as a character. And Fallout 3 nails like just exploring the wasteland, and in the same sense that like Bioshock 1 and 2, they really do nail like this destroyed city. That vibe
Rapture is a cool place
nailed.
to explore. Yeah.
But Fallout New Vegas returns back on like fleshing out characters and all of these factions and like these like intermingling between them, and like it's so cohesive in its writing. And if you can do that with Bioshock, dude, oh my god.
Yeah,
I could cry with the potential of like a New Vegas equivalent for a Bioshock game would be.
Yeah. Oh god, yeah.
God.
New Vegas, and like Bioshock 2 never quite gets there, despite being a different developer who maybe had a slightly better head on their shoulders than the team that made 1 did. They never quite get there.
I am both like hopeful and depressed.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it does come out. I mean, 2K is in a bit of a weird place because obviously, and the thing that I forgot to mention as well is that so 2013, Bioshock Infinite comes out, which is a sales success but critically like toxic. Like it gets a lot of big reviews, and then like a week later, people are, the spell is broken, and people are like, "What the fuck is this?" The Bureau XCOM Declassified also comes out that year, and people are just kind of like, "Oh, what the fuck? Like, what the hell is this?" But it's also when GTA 5 comes out, and 2K goes, "Oh, we have made infinity money on this game, so we're just gonna focus on GTA 5 from GTA Online from here on out. Thanks, everybody. You can all go home." So,
right in the sunset.
So all 2K publish. Well, so that's the thing. Like 2K were using that money to publish a bunch of like cooler, smaller things. Like Firaxis is like XCOM 2 and that Marvel game they did, but then that's obviously kind of gone up in smoke now. And then fucking they had a thing called Private Division, which was like like an indie publishing label. But then very recent news is that they just closed down a bunch of their subsidiaries. So like Roll 7 that were part of Private Division, they had done Ollie Ollie and Rollerdrome. They got closed down.
No, that's right. Yeah. Oh man, Ollie Ollie World was so cool.
It was fucking Rollerdrome. Like
Rollerdrome was so cool.
Rollerdrome fucking bangs. Like
you can't make a good game because you get closed down because it didn't make enough money. I'm so tired
and I was thinking
of this
of,
world
like,
that we live in.
They published this year as well. They did Penny's Big Breakaway, which was that game that the Sonic Mania team had done, and
that's right.
Like not haven't heard anything from it. They didn't really make a big thing of pushing it. And so 2K at this point are just focusing on GTA Online and upcoming GTA 6 and the fucking basketball games.
Ugh.
Yeah. No, I like the games industry does fit like, and in such a way that like I worry about, like we were like hyping up how cool Bioshock 4 could be, but then I just think of like, yeah, but where 2K are at the moment, what stops them from making like a fucking battle royale game set in Rapture?
Oh my fucking god, no!
No, that's not what anyone wants.
My only hope is that I was actually just looking up to see if there was any news on Bioshock 4, and what I did find is there's nothing basically. But they announced it in 2019, which means that they've been working on it since then, which means they've been working on Bioshock 4 before the pandemic, which means that they don't have this this mentality of we need the most money right now. So there's a chance that Bioshock 4 is just a game that the developers and the studio wanted to make that is now being put with all this pressure on it, which is unfortunate and not fair. But that means that it's more than likely, at least it seems like, that it's just going to be, it could be like a Prey. You know what I mean?
Yeah, my wonder as well is that, like, because, you know, did you ever play the DLCs of Bioshock Infinite?
The first one. I never played the second one.
Oh, okay. Well, the second one very much, like, just completely muddles the two, like, fucking universes together at that point, and almost does bunt Bioshock 1 in such a way that they can never really go back to it. But then, I don't know. Like, they could just pretend Bioshock Infinite didn't happen and just like continue on from where Bioshock 2 ended, that'd probably be the best idea.
That's my favorite thing about stories. You can just decide something's not canon anymore.
Yeah, exactly. God. So I will say, apparently, despite this game getting strong reviews, and it did do initial sales of 2.5 million, apparently 2K did deem Bioshock 2 a failure and dissolved the team within 2K Marin that made it. Yeah. And we kind of get into this when we talk about the Bureau, but they end up then becoming a support team for what initially is a first-person shooter reboot of XCOM, which then, over many years, then comes out the other side as the Bureau XCOM Declassified. But
Thank you, Spoonie.
oh yeah, betrayed.
I think they've gone on record saying like that video kickstarted the studio being like, maybe we should just make an XCOM game.
No. I get into it on the episode about how Spoonie didn't have much. Spoonie's reaction didn't have much change on that, but I will say, apparently Spoonie's betrayal was meant to appear in the Bureau XCOM Declassified, but then for some reason it just that idea had fallen through. So,
that would have been great.
We could have had Spoonie in video games, but it just was not to be.
Man, as many good things in the world are.
No. Do you want to take a guess what this game is sitting at on Metacritic?
Oh, Bioshock 2. I'm gonna guess 68.
And it is a little bit higher than that. I might dig into this a little bit when we go for the reviews, but it's actually 88.
Oh, okay.
So 2 points off a 90, which is pretty... And that's based on 93 reviews, which is pretty positive. Now, I think the thing that I've kind of come to talking to you throughout this entire episode about this game is that I think we probably both like this game as much as one another. But where you would say that's a 6 out of 10, I've overvalued it at an 8 out of 10. And most of these reviews have as well, because I feel like everything that they say we would agree on. So Edge gave it an 8 out of 10, which, hey, pretty high for Edge. Said, most of all, Bioshock 2 has one quality that makes us much more hopeful for the future of the series and its inevitable onward growth as one of gaming's biggest franchises. It shows the capacity of Rapture to utterly change itself for the telling of a new tale, while somehow remaining the same.
Yep. Definitely, yeah, they nailed that. 100%, I would agree with that.
8 out of 10 from Eurogamer that says, a less openly provocative game than its predecessor, and one that will capture less attention, very true with that, but while it may be damned for subtlety, it is every bit as deceptive, and perhaps that's the greatest series' illusion, regardless of what else a Bioshock sequel might have become. Which, yeah,
that's a nice, I mean, I that's a well-written review. I like that. To say that it's deceptive, I don't know about that, but
yeah, I wouldn't say it's as deceptive as the first one.
Yeah,
maybe just in regards to if you literally come in expecting Bioshock again and it's not that, I guess it's deceptive. But the highest review was a 90 from the Telegraph, who said, perhaps the main obstacle facing Bioshock 2 is that it lacks one of its predecessor's biggest trump cards, the shock of the new, which I think is my thing of that, yeah, is always going to be marred by being a sequel, where I know like a lot, like, you know, when we talk about movies and stuff, or even games, that, yeah, like some sequels are so like transformative that they become better than the game that they're derivative from. But this is very derivative of its first game, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty hard to recreate, like, you can't have that coming out of the bathysphere moment again, you know what I mean?
No, exactly.
But I mean, I think they did the best that they could with the same location. Like, I don't even think we really mentioned like how visually aged Rapture looks.
Oh,
there's like all of
the
the sea life growing everywhere now because it's been leaking for however long. Stuff like that is super cool, and it does build the world out in a way that you couldn't have done with the first game.
No, and the cool thing is that between that and the multiplayer, you get like 2 snapshots of you get Rapture pre-fall, where everything is still like intact and cleaned up, to the extent of they brought back like arenas and like maps from the first game and remade them to show you how they would have looked when they were in their prime. But then in the main game, yeah, like they show how aged everything is and covered in barnacles and like coral and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And just, yeah, like even as an art style, it feels like way more progressed. It's progressed a lot more than the original Bioshock as well. It's very neat.
Yeah, and like I said, like if you're gonna be in the same place, you have to do something like that to keep it to still retain some feeling of like the new, for sure.
Oh yeah,
and they nailed that part. I think.
No, I'd say so too. Which again, I think goes back to the fact of just all of those things and all those positives I would say is what pushes it to an 8 out of 10. But I guess I could also understand, say, well, everybody has different rating systems, so I could understand how perhaps that might be like a 6 out of 10 on your kind of rating scale based on the stuff that you like. But
I think what what personally justifies my 6 as opposed to a 7 or an 8 is like the combat in Bioshock 2 is drastically better than the first one, but I think it is due to just it's being quicker, and then and then the drill arm, in my opinion, is the only attack or weapon in the first 2 games that even remotely feels good. All of the guns in Bioshock 1 and 2 to me just feel like paper, and like that's to me a huge detriment to a shooter. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like that's what I think brings it down so significantly for me, because Bioshock 2 at least has the drill arm and the speed. Bioshock 1 is slow and clunky and also feels like paper. You know what I mean?
Oh god, yeah. Whereas I think I'm a little bit more inflated my view, because I've wrote like a note down on here, which is just that like basically playing so many FPS games for this podcast, I do end up like, especially articulating how FPS games feel, like trying to articulate that is really difficult. And so I do end up just grasping onto games that do more than just be an FPS game, which this very much does. But like,
oh yeah,
this having the level of polish that it does and the level of competence that it does like when comparing that to even good stuff that I've played on this podcast, but like nothing's quite to the AAA level of this. Like I can recognize this and go, I see the elements in this that would make this like an 8 out of 10 versus say like the Drek that we usually play for this that I would still give like which I would still get like Scorn. I think is a good contrast of this, of just like there was a lot I liked in Scorn, but there was also like in terms of gameplay there was barely any meat on that bone. Really. Sure. This is at least with this had a little bit more going on, but then you know, 2 very different games, I suppose.
Yeah, but no, I definitely get the connection between the two. Definitely.
Oh yeah. They're both survival horrors, as we established.
Oh God.
So to round things out, we'll quickly go through the quiz as as we are coming up on time. But this would have qualified for the week of February 13th, 2010. Do you want to take a guess out of the top 30 where this game may have qualified, or even if it did qualify?
I'm gonna guess top 30 games of that week. Top selling.
Yes.
Okay.
Top selling games.
I'm gonna guess number 18.
Well, shockingly, this game came in at number 1.
Wow!
On the charts,
selling failure.
Nearly half a million copies in its first week. Which is
a certified failure from 2K, by the way.
Yeah, an absolute dudster from 2K games.
Oh my god.
I mean, it's one of those things that is just like, because I think Bioshock 1 did like insanely well for like how much they probably paid for it, but it was just that like they probably expected the same from a sequel, whereas, well, again, they, all the promotion and all the advertising around the game basically said it's not by the people who made Bioshock 1. That game's coming in soon and it's going to be
the guy that made the one you really liked, he's not in this one. Buy it.
He didn't work on this one, and this one has multiplayer in it. Again, you were saying about the fact that you were very sort of put off by that era games. There was a lot of gamers who were feeling like shit. Games have just left me, but it's partially why I think the Dark Souls was such a huge success, because it was so unlike anything that was coming out Western.
Oh, yeah.
at the time, you know.
The fact that Demon Souls was PS3 exclusive, I think, hurt that
Oh,
initially.
that's what killed it. Yeah,
Yeah.
but like it had this sort of mysticism. Like people were buying PS3s to get Demon Souls, and so Namco very much saw a thing here of this is something special, and basically put Dark Souls 1 into commission, and that just became like a fucking phenomenon as a result. You know,
And created one of the most toxic fan bases of all time.
oh yeah, that's why this isn't a Dark Souls podcast. Also because I'm not a massive fan of them. But hey ho. But let's guess the rest of the chart, starting with number 2, which is also new this week, is a game published by EA and developed by Visceral Games.
Dead Space?
So, it's not Dead Space.
Oh, is it Dante's Inferno?
It is
Yeah,
Dante's
dude.
Inferno.
Oh,
their,
man.
Their God of War clone starring...
Okay, guess where my opinion on Dante's Inferno lands.
11 out of 10.
Well, okay, it's definitely in the positive. I don't know if I'd go 11. But
Okay, right. But pretty high
I
up.
think Dante's Inferno. I don't know about God of War 2, but Dante's Inferno blows God of War 1 out of the water. Might be better than God of War 2. Definitely not as better than God of War 3. But Dante's Inferno fucking rips, dude. Oh.
Yeah, no, Dante, again, like, people give EA a lot of shit, and, like, that game got a lot of shit because it was like, no, they're adapting one of an Italian epic from the 1600s into a God of War clone. Oh, you know, kind of, a lot of very snooty kind of pretend. Like, the game's good. Like, it was a cool idea, and it had, like, a lot of cool shit in it, and so... I mean, hey, it was called Dante's Inferno. Who cares? Like,
my pitch whenever I'm like trying to get people to play Dante's Inferno, I'm always like, okay, dude, hear me out. The first 15 minutes, you kill Death and he begs for his life. How is that not like an instant selling point? Like, are you kidding me?
It's sick.
It's so good.
His wife dies and he stitches the fucking Christian crucifix cross into his chest and then dives into hell.
It's so sick.
It's so mad. A game that isn't a lot like Dante's Inferno at number 3. It's been in the charts for 13 weeks. It is a game by Nintendo for the Wii.
2010.
Yeah.
Smash Brothers?
It is not Super Smash Bros., but it is a game that stars Mario.
Galaxy 2.
It's not Galaxy 2.
Oh, is it Galaxy 1?
It's not Galaxy 1, no. It's one of the 2D ones.
Oh, shit. New Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah, I'll give you that. New Super Mario Bros. Wii.
Oh
for
my
the
god, I
Nintendo
hate those.
Wii.
I hate the title of those games. Why did they do that?
Oh, I know. They had given up at that point.
Oh.
They were just like, oh, it's new, and whatever the name of the console is, thumbs up.
Stamp, pass, stamp.
Stamps approved. Number 4 on the charts is another Wii game, and I'll give you this clue. It's been in the charts for 169 weeks.
What? Holy shit! This has to be Smash Brothers.
It's not. It's not.
Oh my god! It's on the Wii. It's been for 169 weeks.
I'll give you a clue. It's been in the charts for as long as the Wii has been out.
Oh god! Wii Sports.
It is Wii Sports. It has sold 26 million copies so far in the 3 fucking years the Wii has been out.
I am so stupid. I said in 2010, 120. It's got to be Smash Brothers. What the fuck is wrong with me?
It's gotta be Smash Brothers.
I'm so stupid. I kind of had one of those moments where like I'm looking and I'm thinking about it and I come to the realization and I like look up and I'm like, oh no.
Oh, dang.
Oh, that's so funny. Anyway, Wii Sports.
Number
Wii
5
Sports
of the
is a good game.
charts has been there for 3 weeks. It has sold 794,000 copies so far. Is an RPG from EA.
2010 Dragon Age Origins?
It's not Dragon Age, it's the other one from BioWare.
Mass Effect 2.
Mass Effect 2 by BioWare and EA Games. It is a big-ass seller, which makes sense.
I need to finish Mass Effect 2. I never got around to fucking Garrus. All I wanted to do was fuck Garrus. I have to do that.
All I want to do is have sex with Garrus, and they won't let me. They should patch the game so they can let. That's the first thing you get to do before you do anything else. Is just get to have sex with Garrus. Pretty good.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. Number 6 in the charts has been there for 14 weeks. Is a first-person shooter. Probably the most first-person shooter.
It's been for 6 weeks?
14 weeks.
Oh, 14 weeks.
Yeah.
Is it?
So it would have come out last November.
Is it whatever Call of Duty that was?
Do you wanna take a guess what Call of Duty it might be?
Black Ops, probably?
It's not Blops, no. It's the one before Blops.
Oh, Jesus, I don't know. Modern Warfare 3?
It closes. Call of Duty Modern Warfare. The second one.
Oh, okay.
From Infinity Ward and Activision. And it's sold 8 million copies so far. What a big ass seller it is.
Damn.
Say what's an even bigger ass seller there. At number 7 is been there for 19 weeks is another Nintendo Wii game.
19 weeks. Okay, no, I'm kidding. This one is
this Smash Bros. No.
19 weeks. It's on the Wii.
Mm-hmm.
The Conduit?
I wish it was the Conduit. We need to do the Conduit on the podcast or something.
That's a quintessential bullet time
that is
game.
That is a fucking fucking bullet ass time game. No, it is. It's Nintendo published. It's I'll say.
This one's Mario Galaxy.
It's not Mario Galaxy.
Oh, I don't know Nintendo games on the Wii. The Wii sucked.
I'll give you a clue. A game for mums.
Cooking Mama?
Not Cooking Mama.
Damn
no. I'll see if I can give it another clue. What's that? It's not Animal Crossing.
Oh.
No, I'll say it's one of those franchises that, well, it's literally called Wii something.
Oh God. I have no idea. Wii Music?
Oh, it's not Wii Music. It's the other one.
Wii Fit.
I'll give you that. It is Wii Fit Plus.
Oh, okay.
By Nintendo. It has sold 3 million copies. Now, at number 8, unfortunately, you're not out of peak Wii rate yet because this has been in the charts for 29 weeks, and it's another Nintendo published Wii ass game.
Wii Sports Resort.
It is Wii Sports Resort.
Let's go!
By Nintendo. Let's fucking go. 4.9 million copies sold so far.
Holy shit.
Yeah, no, the Wii Sports games are doing fucking crazy. I tell you what game isn't doing crazy though, or it's doing crazy at the moment, but probably won't be after that. This has been in the charts for 3 weeks. This is going to be a tough one, so I'm going to give you lots of clues for this, I think. It's been in the charts for 3 weeks. It's a PS3 exclusive FPS game.
Haze.
It's not Haze.
Damn it!
No. The selling point of this game was that you could have multiplayer matches up to 256.
Oh, Mag!
It is Mag
Oh.
massive action game.
I loved Mag so much.
I've never played it.
Oh, it was so cool. It was really funny because when I started playing it, though, it was like towards the tail end of its life.
Oh, so it was just dead then, like.
No. There was enough people playing that like I got all like I got the Mag experience, but like the amount of people that
yeah.
I would see over and over and over again was really funny.
Wow. It was like being at a school with like 200 people and just recognizing people day in and day out.
Yeah,
like,
no, seriously, that's exactly what it was like. I was like, I fought that guy 3 days ago. What is he doing here? How am I fighting him again?
He loves Mag. I mean, I put in. The funny thing is that on my document I've highlighted it and put in brackets future bullet time game. I don't think there's any way to play Mag nowadays, is there? Like, those servers must be long gone, right?
I would think somewhere there's like a fan server up, but maybe not.
Yeah, no, that's the only problem with a lot of like stuff I'd like to do for Bullet Time is that they're usually multiplayer only, and those servers are just gonzo. But no, maybe I'll do like maybe we'll do like an oral history of MAG, of the people who played it when it came out. You'll have to help us out with
Sure.
the oral history of MAG : Massive Action Game. And then finally, at number 10, it has been in the charts for 13 weeks. It's another Nintendo Wii game, but this one's by Ubisoft.
Oh, Rayman Rabbids.
It's not Rayman Raving Rabbids.
It's a Nintendo game published by Ubisoft.
Yes. Think of... This is still a franchise that they make, weirdly enough. Think of every Ubisoft E3 and how they open.
Oh, God. Cringe? Dancing? Well, Just Dance.
It is the first Just Dance for
I
the
can't
Nintendo
believe that actually helped me remember what this is.
I thought I was being... I didn't know if you were an E3 head like I was, so I wasn't sure whether I'd be pushing my luck there, but no, like... Or even if you were an E3 head, whether you actually watched the Ubisoft ones or not. But,
oh my God.
Yeah.
What do you think of when you think Ubisoft and E3? Cringe and dancing. Oh.
Yeah. Oh, both those things. Just Dance. Yeah. 500,000 copies sold so far. Yeah, Just Dance obviously will go on to be one of the defining games of the Wii era, as I call it, the Wii era.
Oh, so. Did I mention how much the Wii sucked?
This has been an interesting episode for Stan. I mean, the thing is that I like the Wii, and I'm sure if we talked about the Wii, we'd have exactly the same opinions of it. It's just that you think it sucks and I think it's okay. Wii's okay.
Oh, that's really funny. You know what? Probably.
Yeah, probably. This has been a fun episode. I'm glad you were able to hang out for as long as you have. But we'll quickly blast through this because obviously you got places to be. But like I said, thank you very much for coming back.
No problem. Thank you for having me again.
No, absolutely, and we'll get you back for something. Maybe MAG if we figure that out in the future. Until then, is there anything you'd like to promote or point people towards?
You can check me out on YouTube. I am Sputnik34. I recently put out a video talking about Crow Country, the internet darling's new favorite survival horror game. But I talk about mortality, Crow Country, and the state of the gaming industry. It's kind of more than just about Crow Country, and I'm very proud of that video. And it's bombing, so if you want to watch it, I would greatly appreciate it.
You want to help a brother out? Weeks after I mean, this will be out in a while, but hey, you might get a spike.
You never know.
That'd be good. Never know.
I'll take it if I can get it. And then you can find me on Twitter. And for some reason, my Twitter handle, I don't know why I did this, is Sputnik345. Don't know why.
It is very funny.
That is what happened.
Oh dear. Good to hear. As per usual, I've been James. You can follow me over on Twitter as well at HotCider, HOTCYDER. If you liked the episode, please leave us a review. If you really liked it, consider supporting us on Patreon over at HotCider as well. As said, in the next episode, we will be wrapping up the world's shortest bullet time mini-series on 2K Marin by looking at the Bureau XCOM Declassified. So I hope you join us for that. Until then, though, I guess keep drilling, because I guess that's what you do as a big daddy, rather than keep... Yeah, there you go.
Keep moving.
Yeah, keep moving. There you go.
There you go.
Keep moving, everybody. This podcast has been made possible by Dylan Robinson, Eric Hamilton Schneider, Jesse Garasha, Kevin from Pixellet, Mouse, Twyla27, Valerie B, VG, and the Hot Cider support tier. If you'd like to help with the production of episodes and gain access to extra content, consider supporting over at patreon.com/hotcider. That's HOTCYDER. A special thanks to Max Coburn for the Bullet Time theme tune.